The Nintendo eReader is a little remembered card reader add-on for the Game Boy Advance with a lot of different uses. It was released shortly after the Game Boy Advance launch, and despite the GBA being a massive success for Nintendo, this Swiss Army knife of a peripheral was not, lasting only 2 years in North America. It was the key to unlocking bonus content in a handful of GBA games and GameCube games, as well as capable of playing games itself, and side note, it was not Nintendo's unexpected foray into the cutthroat world of ebook devices like the Amazon Kindle, which is probably what you were trying to Google. Like a lot of Nintendo's gadgets, it was a little ahead of its time and a little too unwieldy for its own good. Still, it's a fascinating device for this show we call Punching Weight, where we celebrate the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary. And in this episode, we're going to take a deep dive into the Nintendo GBA eReader. It's easy to forget about the trading card game boom of the late 90s and early aughts. Magic the Gathering had been holding it down for years, but then along came Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And suddenly, we're seeing trading card game spin-offs, trading card mini-games, and whole games based around a deck of cards. Cards were hot, and when you also take into account Nintendo's penchant for differentiating themselves from the competition with neat system add-ons, it's no surprise they wanted in on the action. The GBA eReader was a collaboration between Nintendo, Creatures Inc., who also had a hand in the Game Boy camera, and HAL Laboratories, with the actual card-reading tech developed by camera manufacturer Olympus. It was originally a far less ambitious device, first unveiled to the West as the Pokemon eReader at E3 2001, only as a device to turn your GBA into a virtual Pokédex for the Pokemon TCG. In fact, when it was first released in Japan in December 2001, it did not have a link cable capability, which we'll break down in more detail in a minute. Nintendo would later release an updated version, the eReader Plus, that included link cable support and opened up a whole new world of possibilities. This is technically the version released in September 2002 to North America and Australia. However, it was simply known as the eReader to avoid confusion. For reasons that'll become clear later on, the eReader never made it to Europe. It retailed for $39.99 in the US, which is about $55 today, with various packs of cards ranging from $3 to $6. Not too bad, but to really make it work, you needed a lot of extras on top of that, depending on how you wanted to use it. The GBA link cables, a second GBA, a GameCube GBA link cables for that, and then of course, the cards themselves. eReader cards, and there were over 1,000 of these, held data on a dot code strip printed along the card's border. Cards had 1 to 2 stripes, holding 2.2K of data on the long side and 1.1K of data on the short side. For those playing along at home, that's about 544 cards for the DOS shareware of Doom if they were using the 2 long sides, which I don't think anyone's put GBA Doom on the eReader yet, so get on that, modders. Now the technical details are cool, but like, Grace, what is this? Is this... Ladies and gentlemen, we did the math. The no-intro version of GBA Doom could fit on 486 cards with the vertical and horizontal dot code, and 180 cards with the 2 horizontal dot codes to make 666 cards. My god. What have we done? We're not done.
Get on it, modders!
So technical details are cool, but what do these cards actually do? Well, they did a lot of things. They could have full NES games, original minigames, a whole standalone board game, videos, and tons of extra content for games, like new areas, new challenges, items, music, and at least one time where it was used to patch out a glitch. So in short, it did a lot of things. In fact, too many things. There were also a lot of different ways to actually get cards. The eReader came packed with cards, some games came bundled with cards, some were packed into magazines, and others were given away at special events and are very rare. But most cards were sold as packs for about $5 a pop. Well, at least the NES ones were. Cards for games like Animal Crossing and Pokemon, though, in keeping with the tradition of trading cards, were parts of a larger set. For example, Animal Crossing E-Series 1 had 66 total cards and sold 5 cards in a booster pack for $2.99 each. It was difficult to collect them all, and it's easy to see why it'd be hard to convince Mom to indulge in any of this. So that's a lot off the top, but the real question I'm sure you're wondering is, how does it actually work? The eReader itself is a rather big device, bigger than a GBA SP. Doesn't exactly fit in your pocket. It's not really portable. It is essentially a GBA cart with a giant card reader on top with a slit for sliding cards. And because it is essentially just a GBA cart, it works with anything with a GBA port, including the GameCube GBA player and DS. The problem comes with the link cable port. While it fits perfectly for the classic GBA and GameCube player, it's not the best fit for the SP. Requires a link cable adapter for the micro, and physically doesn't fit the original DS, though if you carve out a hole in the plastic casing, it will work. This is not an issue for the DS Lite, by the way, but it's so weird looking with a giant card reader bolted to it. Again, can't imagine why this never caught on. Side note, because all GBAs are region-free, the eReader itself is also region-free, except the cards themselves are not. So that sucks. The device itself works well enough, though can be temperamental. A big problem is that scanning is actually a real pain. You have to slide a card at just the right speed.
Read error.
Most cases require multiple swipes from multiple cards. Luckily, you can swipe cards in any order you want, but you're required to hit A on the GBA every time a swipe is successful or unsuccessful. We found using the GameCube GBA player works best because it stabilizes the unit. Thankfully, the eReader has its own internal memory, so once you've swiped in a game, it stays saved in the eReader until you swipe in something else, which is really cool. When we pulled this thing out of storage, there was a game still saved on here from probably 15 years earlier. Speaking of the games, let's start diving into the actual uses of the eReader. Like we said, this thing did a lot of things, but our favorite are the classic NES games. Predating the Virtual Console and the classic NES series on the GBA, these were one of the first times Nintendo re-released old games as standalone content, and it was a major selling point in commercials. Like we said, sliding 10 data stripes will test your patience, but having an entire NES game stored on 5 cards is still such an amazing thing. There were 13 classic NES games released in total, and we happen to have 4 of them. Of the games we were able to test, none had anything that isn't in the OG NES versions. In fact, they're actually missing features. Balloon Fight and Ice Climber are missing a 2-player option, and Excite Bike still does not have the ability to save custom tracks, though they at least took the option out. The biggest knock against them is that none of them save high scores. I mean, the damn thing is rewritable. You'd think that storing high scores while the game was loaded into the eReader wouldn't be too big of an ask. At any rate, high score saves, 2-player mode, and even the ability to save custom tracks were later implemented into the GBA Classic re-releases, which renders these eReader versions pretty obsolete. Another negative, each NES game comes on 5 cards. Again, the novelty of having an entire NES game housed on 10 lines of data printed on 5 cards is still pretty mind-blowing. But if you lose a card or buy an incomplete set, the rest are basically useless. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't the most organized kid growing up. I'm honestly not sure how I managed to keep all these together after all these years. Similarly to the NES games, Nintendo also planned on dipping into the vault for Game & Watch re-releases, but that was canned after the eReader underperformed. Manhole E came packed in with the eReader, and it is the sole Game & Watch game for the eReader. Here's something odd. Unlike the NES games, it does not save onto the eReader and needs to be rescanned every time you want to play. So you could either lug around your GBA and your eReader and your Manhole E card, or just play Manhole on one of the various Game & Watch collections for the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. Needless to say, the eReader version does not save high scores, which is almost the entire point of games like that. But hey, this is Punching Weight, and we are all about unnecessary. Moving on, the next eReader game is pretty damn impressive. It's both one of the coolest eReader games and the biggest indicator that Nintendo did not believe in the eReader. Mario Party E. Yes! Not only did Nintendo actually release a board game version of Mario Party, its cards had eReader support. It's an otherwise fully functional tabletop board game with extra bonus games played on a GBA. Yes, the eReader games are just extra bonus games because it didn't even come bundled with an eReader. Nintendo expected you to already have one, I guess. The game can be played without an eReader, so we also have no idea why it's called Mario Party E. But the king of trading cards was, of course, Pokemon.
Gotta catch the cards.
Pokemon TCG cards had eReader dot codes from Expedition to EX Team Magma versus Team Aqua, which comes out to over a whopping 600 cards. Jeez. You might have had eReader cards in your collection this whole time and not even known it. Most of these cards had a single code stripe on the short side that displayed Pokedex information, which, if you'll remember, was the original intention of the eReader. But other cards also had long slide codes that unlocked minigames, animations, and music. Some even unlocked secret attacks that could be used during play, but these were never tournament legal. We have the full Machop evolution set, which came packed in with the system, which means we can unlock the minigame Machop at Work. It's a game where Machop is a good boy just doing his best and working for the weekend. But there are dozens of minigames like this, and as far as we know, they have never been re-released, which means there is a ton of exclusive Pokemon content locked within these cards. Now, part of this may be because these minigames were released while Wizards of the Coast was publishing the TCG. When Nintendo took over from them in June 2003, they stopped making minigames altogether and only published short side dot codes. Fun fact, Wizards of the Coast actually raised the price of the TCG when the dot codes came out, which Nintendo kept until way after the eReader was discontinued in the US.
Boom! Baby.
We'll be right back. But, I hear you asking, what about them poker main video games? Well, you're in luck, because there's also another completely separate kind of Pokemon eReader cards that work with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. There are far fewer cards for these games, about 60 Battle E cards, and that's including promo cards released in North America, though there are a few more sets in Japan. By the way, to give you an idea of how short-lived the eReader was in North America, it didn't even last a full Pokemon generation, as all the eReader functionality was taken out of Pokemon Emerald for its international localization. There are a few different types of Battle E cards. The most common ones are the Trainer and Berry cards, which allow you to battle new trainers or allow you to get exclusive berries, respectively. The most famous and sought-after card, though, is the elusive Eon Ticket, which was only given out by Nintendo at E3 2003, in volume 173 of Nintendo Power, and at some Toys R Us stores. Rest in peace, Toys R Us. Players who got an Eon Ticket were also able to share copies of it via record mixing, so the eReader wasn't the only way to get it. The Eon Ticket let you go to a special location where you could capture Latias or Latios, depending on your game. Unfortunately, to do any of this, you need a second GBA. Remember, the eReader is basically a GBA cart itself, so first, you need your GBA with your copy of Ruby or Sapphire, a link cable, and a second GBA with the eReader. It was reasonable for Nintendo to expect the average Pokemon superfan to have a link cable and a friend or sibling with their own game in GBA to trade with. That's the entire idea behind making two versions of each game. But this was just a step too far, and it didn't catch on like Nintendo had hoped, at least in North America. Still, my favorite Battle E card, though, was a special card released only in a Japanese magazine that actually patched out a glitch. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire had a weird bug which basically created a lost year where berries couldn't grow for a full calendar year. This card set could actually execute code into the game and patch it out. Now, sure, there were other ways Nintendo allowed players to patch out this glitch, but for my money, this is one of the coolest uses of an eReader card. Another super cool eReader game was Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3, aka the greatest name for a Nintendo game of all time. Though it's a shame they didn't go all the way dumb and call it Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3E, which is what the cards were called. Side note, the best video game title of all time is still Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. Anyway, SMA4 SMB3E US had 36 cards spread across 2 series, and they were all really cool. The cards had a few basic flavors. Demo cards that were essentially speedruns and let's plays before YouTube, and power-up cards, which let you add items to your inventory or modify the game itself with switches that changed the way the game was played. However, the true star of the show were the exclusive brand new level cards. There were 38 total eReader exclusive levels, of which only 13 were ever released in the US. By traveling to World E, you can play these new levels and also collect special coins, which were only available in eReader levels. Collecting enough coins would actually unlock 3 more minigames, but because of how bad the eReader flopped, 2 of these minigames were not unlockable in North America because we missed out on 25 level cards. After the eReader got kiboshed, it created a weird market in the Mario fandom. SMA4 SMB3E eReader card levels would actually save onto your cart after you unlock them. So for a long time, one of the only ways you could play these levels is if you bought a cart that had all the unlocked levels on it. For example, our copy was bought secondhand and has a few levels saved on it. In 2016, Nintendo re-released SMA4 SMB3E onto the Wii U Virtual Console, and it actually has all the levels and minigames unlocked from the start, including the levels that were previously Japanese exclusive. Not to mention, a physical cart actually doesn't have enough room for all 38 levels, so this makes the Virtual Console version the definitive version, which is kind of unprecedented for a Virtual Console release. Now, naturally, all these levels have been recreated in Mario Maker, but this is still really cool. However, all the demo movies and power-up switches are not available on the Wii U version, but the eReader input screen is still there, which is kind of weird. This is particularly upsetting in light of a hidden set of game-altering switches hackers have found buried in the code. The cards that would have activated these switches were never released, so it's worth buying SMA4 SMB3E. Wait, did I say that right? Yeah, okay. SMA4 SMB3E on Wii U Virtual Console for the extra levels, and downloading a ROM to play with the extra switches. Though good luck trying to find those ROMs. Moving on, the third way you can use your e-reader is with the GameCube, and the main way you would have done that, in North America at least, is with Animal Crossing. Pokemon Channel also had e-reader compatibility and came with 3 special cards that you could use for the Smeargle Paint minigame. But after the e-reader got cancelled, they stopped including the cards in the box. They didn't actually remove the e-reader capability, so you can still play the game if you got your hands on the cards. Anyway, Animal Crossing was a hugely ambitious game for a pre-internet time and was compatible with both the e-reader and the GameCube GBA link cable, using them both to unlock a ton of extra content. Connecting your GBA via the GameCube GBA controller link cable granted you access to the island, while the e-reader granted access to a ton of stuff. There are 5 types of Animal Crossing cards spread out over 4 different series, and while that sounds like Nintendo really committing to the e-reader, it's actually another huge example of them not committing. Let's start with the Town Tune cards. They had .code data stripes on them, but also the music notation right there, so you didn't actually need the e-reader to access the song. Character cards could be used to send letters to animals in the game, but each card also had passwords you could send via a letter instead, again reducing the need to use the actual e-reader. On top of everything else, card swiping is particularly time-consuming in Animal Crossing because of its flavorful dialogue trees. Also because the game kicks you out of the menu if you swipe a card wrong. Design cards can be used to put new designs on clothes, which is convenient if you're not that adept at making designs yourself. But if you do have a talent for that type of thing, you don't really need the cards. But that sounds like a hell of a chore to me, so I'll just be sticking with the cards, thank you. The 4th type are the game cards, the true e-reader exclusive stuff. You played them by swiping the game cards and then swiping character cards to put them in your minigame. Full disclosure though, we don't have any of the game cards ourselves and had some problems finding videos of this online. Okay, so now we gotta talk Animal Crossing NES games. Hidden in Animal Crossing are 15 NES games unlocked in various ways, from going to the island, at Tom Nook's Lottery, or through promos given away by Nintendo. They're super difficult to unlock in-game, and back in the day, internet forums were filled with tons of bunk rumors for what games and how to unlock them. Thank goodness we live in today's internet hellscape, and we can save ourselves the drama by Googling the secret game codes and inputting them at Tom Nook's store. However, this only worked for 15 of the actual 19 playable NES games, the remaining 4 being Super Mario Bros., which was Japanese exclusive, The Legend of Zelda, which was never released officially, Ice Climber, and Mario Bros. To access Ice Climber and Mario Bros., you can't input a code. You need their special Animal Crossing e-reader cards. Well, either the e-reader cards or hacking with something like a Game Shark, but I want to make sure we're crystal clear on this. The NES cards are not how you unlock the rest of the NES games in Animal Crossing. And this copy of Ice Climber will not unlock Ice Climber in Animal Crossing. For the version in Animal Crossing, it needs that one special e-card. Side note, it's pretty cool that Animal Crossing has any NES games at all, and it gets credit for being one of the first ways Nintendo re-released a collection of classic NES games. But I still think the eReader NES Classic series takes the cake for being the first, hey, these games are worth playing for their own sake, take on repackaging classic games. it was a genuinely cool way for people to re-experience these games or play them for the first time. But both Animal Crossing and the NES eReader games deserve credit for helping pave the way for the classic NES series on the GBA, the Virtual Console, and the general retro gaming community. The eReader was discontinued in mid-2004, but as we've mentioned, it actually lasted a bit longer in Japan. In fact, its website is still live as of the making of this video. As the eReader was phased out around the world, eReader compatibility was straight up deleted from the localized versions. This, combined with the fact that the eReader was region-locked, meant that only the staunchest importers got to play these games in a way they were meant to be played. We don't have access to all these games, so we'll just run down a quick list. Rockman 03 had eReader mod cards, and their in-game content was fully translated for the English release and accessible via cheat codes. Though the cards themselves never made it overseas, this content would be included in the Mega Man Zero DS collection. Rockman EX 4, 5, and 6 had a similar eReader functionality, but the North American Battle Network games have never been re-released yet. F-Zero GP Legends eReader functionality was somewhat folded into the rest of the game for the US release, and you could unlock certain card features by completing certain tasks. However, Staff Ghosts and E+ course features were removed entirely from the international game. Mario vs. Donkey Kong actually had 5 eReader level cards that are extremely rare, even in Japan. Nintendo only gave out 5 cards, though it appears 12 levels were actually planned for the release and can be accessed via hacking. The Wii U Virtual Console release does not feature these extra levels like Super Mario 3 Advance. Lots of Pokemon games from this time had extra eReader stuff exclusive to the Japanese releases. Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire had a small amount of eReader cards that were given out as promotions. Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green's eReader functionality let Japanese players scan new trainers into the Battle Tower, but most of these trainers are unlocked by default in the worldwide releases. Pokemon Emerald had its eReader functionality removed, but some of the Japanese eReader functions were added to the game. The only way to get an Eon ticket in the PAL and US versions of Emerald is record mixing with another game with an unlocked Eon ticket already. Pokemon Coliseum had a card E-room that was completely sealed off in international versions. It's where you'd have your battle card fights, as well as capture 3 extra Shadow Pokemon. Domokun no Fushigi Terebi is unique on this list because it is a completely Japanese exclusive game. Its e-reader cards could unlock minigames. Hamtaro Card E, or Totokun Hamtaro Ham 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 Ha Magic Princess, actually doesn't work with any GBA games. It's a card set that works similarly to the NES Classic series. Swiping the cards unlocked cute little mini games that really prove that when you work together, it is much better. Grace made me say this. But perhaps the biggest casualty of all, we were robbed of 3 different minigames that you could play on the Game Boy Advance in Pikmin 2! It was so cute! And as far as we know, these games have never been re-released. How you feel, Grace?
That's sad.
And that just about covers everything. The e-reader was short-lived and definitely ahead of its time, but was a pretty damn cool device and a must-have device for hardcore collectors. While Grace and I both love this little thing for all it can do, I can understand why it wasn't successful. Look at how long it took us just to explain it. That's the kind of thing that ad execs lose sleep over. But it's something I hope the hacking community can get excited about. There was a small homebrew scene that seems to have completely petered out by the time the DS conquered the market, but a lot of their documentation is still available for those that are interested. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe, click that bell, leave a like, leave a comment. I'll be over here just swiping some e-reader cards. Yeah. I think I want to play some Excite Bike. Excite Bike. Ooh, forgot about this rockin' music. Grace, we didn't talk about the rockin' music.
We forgot.
Yes. The multiple slots on the DS exposed. Do you think we're gonna get flagged for using the word slot in this video? Hey Grace, stop slot shaming. Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons and Fighting. The monstrously successful Nintendo DS and DS Lite originally had backwards compatibility with the Game Boy Advance in the form of the Game Boy Advance slot here on the bottom. It's actually called Slot 2. I didn't realize that until just before shooting this. Not only did it allow you to play Game Boy Advance games on your DS, which was awesome, it also opened tons of new opportunities for, let's say, true intellectuals who were committed to the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary. Before the GBA slot was phased out with the DSi upgrades, developers released a slew of wild accessories that were truly awesome, that you get the most out of your DS. So pull out your original DS or your DS Lite that you were either too smart or too stupid to have gotten rid of when you updated. This is all about the secrets of the DS GBA slot. And if you want more slot action, let's beam me up, Slotty. And we start with a banger, Guitar Hero on Tour. I'm gonna guess that actually some of you watching this had this game. And you know what's up. I feel like anybody who saw this game in the store, like the first time I played this game was for this video, right? But when I saw this in stores at the time, I saw this little window. Whoever came up with this box idea, the idea of putting the buttons right here, brilliant. Anyway, let's dig into the thing. This is the guy. This thing is so cool because honestly, I don't think you could possibly do Guitar Hero while emulating the actual guitar any better than this. This is probably as good as it can get. It's got a really cool slick design. This plastic on the outside is really stiff and really solid. I feel like I could throw this across the room and it would be fine. So this was a collaboration between Nintendo Red Octane and Vicarious Visions. They came to Nintendo to make this game. Vicarious Visions is just a legit company. They also made Doom 3 for the Xbox. They've been doing insane stuff for a while. I guess when they knock on your door with a great idea, you answer the door. No one wanted to do this. Everyone thought it was crazy. No one asked for this, but then apparently Vicarious Visions walked into Nintendo and said, check it out. And they went, get on it. It's a complicated idea, just done so simply. It's so smart. It just slots into your DS like that, and you hold the game sideways, and you play like this, and you look super awesome. Anyway, so for this video, if we're not clear, these are DS accessories that use the GBA slot, so this by itself has no game on it. You cannot plug this into your Game Boy Advance and expect to use anything. You also cannot play this DS game without the guitar grip. Without the grip, the game's just like, what am I supposed to do? There are 3 different Guitar Hero on tour games. Each one had like 25 songs. You can Wi-Fi stream to each other's games. You could do wireless multiplayer. This is a really robust package. One thing I really like, it uses everything on the DS. As a matter of fact, when you have combos going and you want to use your star power, instead of hitting a button, you just go bah! And it'll do your star power. It did fun things like you're both playing the song, like you can light their guitar on fire, and in order to put your fire out, you have to blow into the microphone. Now, when you look at the track listing for this game, at first I was like a little disappointed. Kind of a lot of slower songs. There wasn't like a Dragon Force, and there wasn't Fall of Troy. And then I realized, because you couldn't do that, your wrist would die. I am pretty sure that All-Star by Smash Mouth is harder to play on this game than on an actual guitar. I feel like I could just never really get a comfortable way to hold this that didn't kill my wrist. The most I could really do, honestly, was like 2 songs. I'm trying to say it's a young man's game. There are Nintendo DS Lites that came bundled with this thing. They sold a couple million copies of this game, and it was right before the Guitar Hero and Band Hero and Rock Band and all that stuff crashed. So this was right at the peak of it. It was perfect timing, and it's about as good as it can be. Next, smile for the camera. This is the Facening Scan. It is the coolest damn thing you'll ever see. It is a Game Boy Advance cartridge with a little camera, and it is for face training, which, as you can see here, is a Japanese game. It is the Adult DS Face Trainer. Hey, you trying to get that ripped face? You want to get your face shredded? You want a beach face to go with the beach bod? You need to get yourself Adult DS Face Trainer. This is maybe the coolest gadget we're going to talk about in this episode. And it's a camera. It's a GBA camera for your DS. How cool is that? Very. So yeah, face training is an exercise game for your face. It is Japanese only, but you don't really need to know Japanese. It's pretty simple. You kind of poke around the menu long enough until a nice Japanese lady starts talking to you, and then a pretty Japanese lady shows up on the left screen and starts making faces, and then you line yourself up with the camera, and then you just mimic those faces, and then it grades you on them at the end, and that's really it. The thing seems kind of ridiculous. It's a game made for women so they can be, you know, prettier. So do with that what you want. I've got the idea of making your face buff, right? Working the muscles out in your face. I thought it was kind of ridiculous until I started doing the exercises and the muscles in my face started immediately twitching, and I was not given a high rating. There's this one move where she looks straight up and then she drops her jaw as much as she can, and I'm like, man, this would be a great horror game if just the eyes kept rolling in the back of her head and her jaw just stretched down. Basically what I'm trying to say is, like, if you want to work your face out, get this game. If you want inspiration for your creepypasta, you know, haunted video game cartridge, also get this game. And the camera works pretty well, as you can see. There's Grace. Maybe it shouldn't come as a surprise that Face Training was co-developed by Intelligent Systems, who did the Paper Mario games, WarioWare, and freaking Fire Emblem. WarioWare Snapped, which is a WarioWare game that came off of the DSi, actually used this exact same technology, and as a matter of fact, Face Training did come out in the PAL region as a DSi downloadable game using the camera on the DSi. There's another game that actually used the Facening Scan cartridge called Project Beauty, or the full name is Shiseido Beauty Solution Kaihatsu Center Kanshu Project Beauty. It was basically a makeup tutorial app that Sega made. It's the only other game that uses the Facening Scan cartridge and comes with one. So the thing to remember about this game is that it came out in 2007, and that was before smartphones basically gobbled up the camera world. It was just too ahead of its time, but it's a really wild and great idea. This was part of the touch generation. Touch generation of DS and Wii games, which were like extremely casual games. Face Training was one of them, and so is this kanji dictionary that came out in Japan, of course. It is apparently 16 players wireless. That's cool. What's also cool is there was also a couple of cookbook games released in Japan, and they came with a magnet that you could slot into the GBA slot, and then I guess stick the GBA on your fridge or your microwave or something like that, so that you can be cooking and looking at the directions and stuff like that. There's a lot of wild stuff that came from like the casual rush of the mid to late aughts. But Face Training, I guess I recommend it. It's pretty wild. Do you want that shredded, buff, right for the summer face? Face Training. Get that shredded face. Are you crying? Ain't no crying in Face Training. Take your face off. What's next? If we are talking about weight loss stuff, talking about ultra casual, we have to talk about the My Coach, which was a line of games that Ubisoft put out for the DS, mainly the DS, a little bit for the Wii, and of course there's the My Weight Loss Coach that came with the pedometer. It clicks. Basically, yeah, you walk around, you get your steps in, and then you plug it into your DS, and then you upload your steps, and then it keeps track of them. I mean, it's a weight loss game outside of the steps, outside of like, hey, your goal is 500 steps. Everything else in the game is like, hey, don't eat salt for a day, or hey, do something else. That's all on the honor system. The game is just like, hey, do you eat bacon? You're like, no. Did you have butter today? No. You're doing great. Oh, cool, I am doing great. And when you put your profile in, it's like, how much do you weigh? I put in my weight, and then like my little stick figure guy goes like, brrr. And like, what are you doing, weight loss coach? More like weight loss bully. You know what? Forget weight loss coach. You're beautiful and you're sexy no matter what you look like, okay? It's what's in here that counts. All right, folks, it's time to stop farting around. It's time to get real. The Facening Scan is really fun. The pedometer is kind of neat. Guitar Hero is really interesting, but let me tell you, like, the actual, genuinely the best thing that you can get for your DS that we're going to talk about on this show is the Taito paddle. You plug it in, you turn it on, and instead of using the D-pad, you use this. And it is so genuinely amazing. This paddle only came out in Japan, and it was bundled with Arkanoid DS. Works for Space Invaders Extreme 1 and 2, Arkanoid DS, and Space Bust-A-Move. But here's the thing about the DS. DS games, and of course, the Taito paddle, are not region locked. So this is an American DS, and this is a Japanese, paddle. You can play this anywhere. So any region, on any system, can play these games. Here is the sad thing. While this thing is amazing and super fun, it doesn't work for any other games, which is a shame. It would be so good for racing games. I wanted so badly to see this would work for any other game. I went through my entire collection, nothing. This would be amazing for Mario Kart. The amount of control that you get with the paddle is so good. And thankfully, there are people doing homebrew stuff and hacking to try and get this thing to work for things like Mario Kart. It would be fantastic if it worked that way. Collecting weird stuff is fun, but it's not practical. Sometimes you buy stuff and you go, cool, and you put it on the shelf and you're like, well, there it is, I have it now, I guess. Say you have multiple Donkey Kongas. You ain't playing those Donkey Kongas. But the Taito paddle, that is a device that you can buy and put it on the shelf and go, man, that's awesome. I'm gonna play that right now. And finally, there's no words. This is a piano. It's Easy Piano for the DS. It was developed by Game Life. It is a little keyboard for your DS. It only has 13 keys from C to Shining C. I think one of the coolest things about it, though, it's gigantic. It's real big. You know, it's not really portable anymore. It's not the first keyboard for a video game system. It wouldn't be the last. Here's the problem. Honestly, the game kind of sucks. It's like they had this awesome keyboard. It didn't really make a game to utilize it completely. There's so many little mini games and things that really just use the stylus. You can totally have Easy Piano in your collection right now, and you don't need the piano. I would say something like 80% of this game does not even require the piano. This game is more of like a bunch of little mini games and some lesson tutorial stuff to teach you how to read music and like kind of basic understanding of like musical notation and stuff like that. That's really what this game is. It's a very strange game that has this awesome peripheral that it does not use. It's baffling. It's kind of disappointing, man. It's definitely the weirdest, neatest thing. I wish I could tell you though that it was good. Go on like Amazon and read reviews from like upset aunts and uncles and grandmas who are like, I bought this game for my niece. I thought she'd love it. I got this for my granddaughter and she didn't play it at all and it's terrible. This is the one that I was like kind of personally disappointed by. I think everything else met or exceeded my expectations. This, you know, the pedometer was like, yeah, it's a pedometer. The Guitar Hero was like, wow, they pulled this off. The paddle was like insane. The piano was kind of a bummer. It was kind of a bummer. And it was kind of expensive. Just displaying this in your collection is the best part of it, to be honest. There's actually one more I want to talk about really quick. Magic Kid Slide Adventure. This is a first-party Nintendo game. Basically, it is a mouse for your DS. You slide the DS around, and that is how you move around. There's an awesome video on IGN. I'm gonna level with you people. We bought all this stuff for this video, as well as some stuff for the Dreamcast peripheral video. We did all that with money that we got when we hit our 400 patron goal. So back in August when we were buying all this stuff, we kind of looked at the numbers and went like, we can't buy Seaman and Magic Kid Slider and the Magical Piano and all this stuff. We had to make a Sophie's choice, and I was like, I want the piano. Screw Magic Kid, I don't want no mouse, I want that piano, and I'm still kicking myself for it because that looks so much cooler. First party Nintendo game, that's wild. It's a puzzle game, it's really cute, the device seems to work really, really well and look awesome. I wanted to get the piano instead, I'm a fool. Oh, and by the way, this is not the only uses of the GBA slot on the DS. There were multiple card readers, like multiple card readers. There was a Beyblade thing. I'm an old man. I don't even know what Beyblade is. I guess let me know in the comments below what the Beyblade is. And not only are there a lot of just wild, wacky accessories that we couldn't cover on this show, there was a whole bunch of games, just normal DS games, that worked in tandem with the GBA slot. And we're gonna talk about that stuff again real soon. We ain't finished with you, girl. We ain't finished with that slot. We're coming back. And hey, when you're watching this tonight, we're gonna play all these on the live stream. I'm gonna get 2 webcams set up and we're gonna have some fun playing this on the live stream. Twitch.tv/StopSkeletonsandFighting. Check that out. Thank you so much to all our Patreon supporters. Their support is why we were able to buy all this junk. It's your fault I had this piano. Thank you so much. We also got merchandise at Pixel Empire. Oh man, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitch, we're on your TV, we're on your monitor right now. Hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Man, we gotta get back to work. More DS stuff coming. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Stay powerful. Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and we got a new camera at Black Friday, and I got a new chair. So things can look slightly different, or worse, or better. Either way, this is Stop Skeletons from Fighting. Hey, I already put you on the spotlight for DS slot life with some of the craziest uses for the GBA slot on the DS, which was only available on the original DS and the DS Lite models. But what about the stuff that the average DS enthusiast would encounter in the wild? I mean, you probably don't have a piano attachment gathering dust in your closet, but there are DS games that work with the GBA cart that unlock new content, ones that you might have right now. Of course, the most famous use of the dual slot action was for Pokemon. The 4th generation Pokemon DS games could interface with the 3rd generation Pokemon GBA games, but link cables didn't work between these two systems, so using the dual slots on an original DS or DS Lite was the only way to migrate your old GBA Pokemon into Generation 4. All you had to do was pretty much finish the game, finish the main story, and gain access to the Pokedex, and then meet Professor Oak, and then go to Pal Park. That's it. To be honest here, the last time that I finished a Pokemon game to completion, there was a tight 3-minute rap that named all of them.
It's been 3,000 years.
Hey, I'm a little out of my element here, so I brought the brightest Skelebro Pokemon slot scholar of our generation, Mr. Loxton.
Oh, what? Hello? Yes. Hi, that's me, I think.
Yeah, Loxton, it's you, Loxton. Wait, that's my joke. I choose you, Loxton. That's a bad joke. Anyway, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me on.
No, dude, thank you for giving me the time. Please, walk me through this. Why is Pokemon migration from Gen 3 to Gen 4 so confusing?
So, under normal circumstances, Pokemon live wherever they are the most comfortable, which is why you can find specific Pokemon only in specific places, for the most part, that is. We do know that most species of Pokemon will have their explorers migrating far and wide across the globe, perhaps traversing the regions, or just sheer curiosity.
Right, and then you put the 2 games in the slots.
Yeah, and in the Sinnoh region, the locals have built a park specifically to attract these foreign Pokemon, likely to spruce up their region's biodiversity. I don't know if you've noticed, but Sinnoh is severely lacking fire types.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I knew that. I knew that. Totally. You're just testing me, and I passed the test because I'm smart.
But anyway, they called it Pal Park, and it especially attracts Pokemon from Kanto and Hoenn, who were just released by their trainers. And they migrate all the way here. And while they are in this park, you can catch them. And later on in Kanto, they did the same thing.
Biodiversity. When did Pokemon become so complicated? I mean, it's just like rock, paper, scissors, right?
Cute. Maybe if there were, 18 different symbols with 2 variants each. But anyway, the Pokemon Company even migrated rare Pokemon into your collection via special containment devices distributed at special events, like this Deoxys.
Wait, so they just distributed Pokemon this way? They didn't do anything else cool like the berry patch on the eReader? Missed opportunity, man!
It's a lot simpler than needing an eReader and swiping some cards a couple of times, or needing to plug your handheld device into the cable that's just dangling there at a store. It's easier this way.
But to be fair, the eReader is a way dumber method. That's a point in my book. But fine, yes, okay. So technology and convenience finally converge on the DS, so I can finally migrate all my Pokemon over, right?
Unfortunately, no. Certain Pokemon ecosystems are permanently shut off from the rest due to... Walls is the opposite of Pokeballs. They keep them out instead of in.
Wait, Poke Walls? This is the dumb stuff and the totally real stuff that I love.
Real walls are not very effective against migration, but the original Gens 1 and 2, as well as the new Gen 8, all have super effective Poke Walls in place. I hope that clears some things up.
Wait, so you've been able to move your Pokemon up from every Pokemon game since 2002 until now?
Well, yeah. Well, if they're allowed into Galar, anyway. Otherwise, you have to wait until Pokemon Home comes out.
So we're just waiting for Game Freak to finally figure out how to use the internet. It's 2019. It's fine. That's fine. And thankfully, the other Pokemon GBA slot games aren't quite as complicated, so I can take it from here. Thank you, dude.
No problem. And next time, could we have our skeletons battle? It'd be pretty funny, all things considered.
Hey, we're Stop Skeletons from Fighting, not prevent consensual fisticuffs. But thank you so much for explaining all that, Loxton. Pokemon. And would you believe it? even the Pokemon spin-offs from this time also have connectivity with the DS GBA slot. Pokemon Dash, for example, also works with the Gen 3 GBA games. But I like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team the best because it's one of the few games that had a tandem red and blue release on the GBA and DS at the same time. There's a few things you can do with both games inserted into the DS, but the main one is that if your Pokemon team faints in one game, you can use the other game to rescue that team without losing money or items. Well, honestly, there's enough hot slot action in the Pokemon verse that it's worth getting a DS or a DS Lite just so you can transfer your team and utilize all the extra features. But that's enough Pokemon. How about we change gears from Pokemon innovation to Hideo Kojima innovation with Lunar Nights and the Boktai games. Boktai is a series of GBA games that have solar sensors built into the cartridge, basically, so you can use actual sunlight to fight off the game's vampires. Well, you're supposed to use sunlight. If you instead live in a place as luminous as Seattle in the winter, you can cheat and just use a blacklight. Stay indoors. By the time the series' fourth entry, Lunar Nights, got released onto the DS, they had to take out the game's expensive sensor. But they got around this by letting you put the previous 3 games in the GBA slot. Yes! This means that not only does Lunar Nights use the GBA slot, it uses the solar sensor on the GBA carts to restore different stats for your inactive characters, depending on the game. It's not necessary for completing Lunar Nights, but it's still really impressive that they still found a way to work in that tech. And I want to give the game credit for actually mentioning all of this in the instruction book, which is pretty rare for peripherals like this. I don't know why they don't talk about it. Put it on the box! How cool is that? But that's not all you can do with Boktai. It also works with freaking Mega Man Battle Network 5 Double Team, which is possibly the most feature-packed Battle Network game ever. Battle Network 5 Double Team was the first Battle Network game to come out on the DS, so it works with every Battle Network game that came before it, which is seriously, there's so many. Capcom was pumping out these games like it was rabbits breeding back then. It was just nuts. But I just really want to highlight that this is a Capcom game that works with a Konami game, which, like, you can't cross the streams like that. I mean, what's gonna happen? Mega Man's and Solid Snakes living together? Mass hysteria. Also, apparently the Soul Cross that you get from Boktai 2 completely breaks the game. Good stuff. But this is just a small sampling of the games that work in tandem with other DS games. Plugging in Castlevania Aria of Sorrow into Dawn of Sorrow makes a Mina doll appear in the shop, which doesn't really affect anything in the game except for soothing my inner Dracula rage. We all have it. It's part of growing up. It's nothing major, but I owned these games for years and had absolutely no idea about any of this stuff. And there's similar bonus content for Mega Man XZ, Advance Wars, The Sims, and Frogger. Did you know there were so many Frogger games and they all worked together to unlock bonus stuff? Somebody out there had a way better childhood than me. What's up with these guys, huh? Maybe you've seen these around at retro shops, and as you can probably guess, they are not actually GBA games, but DS accessory packs. We got the Memory Expansion Pack, the Rumble Pack, and the Motion Pack. I want to start with this one because it's spelled P-A-C-K, which is how you actually spell the word pack, Nintendo. The Motion Pack houses an accelerometer to detect motion and is used in exactly one game, Tony Hawk's Motion, aka the worst rated Tony Hawk game until Pro Skater 5 came out 7 years later. I love how everything about this game is absolutely unnecessary. It was released in November 2008, which was the same month as the DSi, which, if you'll remember, did not have a GBA slot, so the timing wasn't right. It's a Tony Hawk game where you steer by turning the system, and of course it has all the nuance of trying to steer a cow onto a half pipe. Oh, my life to use this game with the Taito paddle instead. On top of that, even though we got all the accesses of motion, it uses every button on the DS for tricks, plus you gotta tap the touchscreen to do specials. I admire the moxie, but why would you make a motion game that uses so many buttons? This game was made by Create Studios, or Creat, there's no E, I don't know, who had a tough act to follow since handheld Tony Hawk games actually had a pretty good track record before this thanks to Punching Weight Heroes' Vicarious Visions. I actually really like this game from a Garbo curiosity standpoint now, but I think back then, no one was really ready to accept the fact that the Tony Hawk franchise, the great Tony Hawk franchise, was in freefall. The shocker here was the bonus game packed in, Hue Pixel Painter. This is a totally separate game. It has nothing to do with Tony, and it's a shame it had to share the spotlight. It's a charming little game where you cover your little guy in paint and connect dots around areas of a map to bring color and light to the world. It's like a hybrid ActRaiser and Kicks. It's cute, simple, way more fun than Hawk's Motion. I mean, this should have been the main game with Tony Hawk as the bonus. Seriously, track down this game, but for Hue Pixel Painter. But of course, Activision wasn't the only ones to shove the extra tech into a GBA cart. Nintendo also made peripheral cartridges that are compatible with a whole slew of games like the Nintendo DS Rumble Pack. This is like a throwback to the N64 era, and it works with a surprising number of games, 50. But I actually only have 4 compatible games, none of which are Metroid Prime Pinball, which is what the Rumble Pack was bundled with in the US. It works about as well as you'd expect, and I didn't find it to be too loud or that intense, but I noticed that all the compatible games I own use it differently, and some don't use it that well. It's weird that people were still struggling with Rumble in the mid-aughts, but it's really good in games like Partners in Time, where it helps with timing my crit hits, and I loved how it pulsed to the awesome soundtrack of Space Invaders Extreme, though it did make me have to choose between playing with Rumble or the paddle, and oh man, too bad I couldn't have both. Alright, so if you made it this far in the video, I got a real treat for you, and it is the Nintendo DS Memory Expansion Pack, aka maybe the single most useless thing we have ever covered on Punching Weight. You maybe didn't even know about this because while it adds an extra 8 megabytes of RAM to the Nintendo DS, the sole game that used it was the DS's crappy Opera-based web browser. 2 of these bad boys were actually released, this GBA size one and then a half-size one for the DS Lite. In the US, this one was only available online through the mail, so this cart is actually kind of rare, but I paid $5.50 for it, so it definitely ain't valuable. Now, you'd think that this would have worked like the N64 expansion pack, and in theory it would, except that the N64 and the DS are pretty different systems, and the extra RAM just wasn't necessary, I guess. Not surprisingly, the homebrew community found the most use for it, though as far as I can tell, the only true game that can use the official Nintendo Memory Expansion Pack is the homebrew of Quake 1, and even there, it's optional. Some third-party expansion packs are produced that are used for homebrew applications, but in terms of the official cart, that's about it. And for the record, we could have bought the DS browser for this video, but then I would have had an actual use for this thing, and no, listen. I have in my GBA collection a truly, completely useless object, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The DS in its slot, so many mysteries, so much wonderful stuff there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. In November 2004, Nintendo released the DS. It would become one of the most successful products in consumer electronics history, with over 150 million units sold worldwide. It would be iterated on with the DS Lite, DSi, 3DS, 2DS, new 3DS, new 2DS, and you can even see its inspiration in the Wii U. Its dual-screen setup actually goes all the way back to the late 70s with the Game & Watch games, but it wasn't the only time Nintendo played with the concept. The GameCube Game Boy Advance link cable debuted in Japan on December 14, 2001, and in North America on February 12, 2002. Not to be confused with the GameCube Game Boy Advance player, which just allowed you to play Game Boy games through your GameCube. The link cable allowed certain GameCube games to be played with a GBA using its screen in tandem with your television. According to Wikipedia, there are just shy of 60 compatible games with the link cable, and they all use it slightly differently, unlocking hidden content or items, mini-games, demos, even a few games that require the link cable to play them at all. Welcome to Punching Weight, the show that celebrates the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary, and we're digging through our GameCube and Game Boy Advance collection to see what kind of secrets are hidden behind the GameCube Game Boy Advance link cable. The GameCube link cable, which I'm going to be calling it just to simplify things a bit, is a 6-foot cable that has a GameCube controller plug on one end and a wide gray piece of plastic that plugs in next to the GBA's charging port on the other. It's got these snazzy purple wings that help you grip the system better when you're playing it and also remove the cable when you're finished. It's compatible with both the original and SP Game Boy Advance models and either the GameCube or the Wii. Many third-party cables exist, but we just happen to have 2 official Nintendo cables. So that's what we're going to be using for this video, not that it probably makes any kind of difference. The N64 Rumble Pack and the Game Boy Transfer Pack were bundled with Star Fox 64 and Pokemon Stadium respectively. The GameCube Link cable was no different, so since it was bundled with The Legend of Zelda: The Four Swords Adventures, let's start with that game. Zelda 4 Swords Adventures is a co-op party game where up to 4 players control their own Link. Players have to work together to get through familiar puzzle situations, like pushing or lifting heavy objects or standing on switches. Anyone who's played A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo will immediately understand what's going on here. There's no giant overworld, it's more like Mario with different worlds and levels. The game first made its appearance as an extra game on the GBA port of Link to the Past, however, that version could only be played with other players, never solo. The GameCube version, however, can be played solo, though the best experience is with other people. The GameCube Link cable functionality is basically this. In each level, players are free to go off on their own. I mean, you're in theory supposed to stick together and work together, but what's the fun in that? If someone leaves a screen by going in a cave, falling down a hole, swimming under a bridge, instead of changing everyone's view on the TV, that happens on their GBA screen. They essentially leave the TV and continue playing on their GBA. The GBA screen also shows up even when you're playing single player, which is a neat touch. Honestly, Four Swords is a pitch-perfect way to show off the Link cable's capabilities. Plus, it's a really neat little Zelda spin-off and has the distinction of being the first co-op Zelda game. I only wish I had 4 GBAs and 4 Link cables so I could really play this game to its fullest, but ask anyone who's been lucky enough to experience this game to its true 4-player mode. It's a sight to behold. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was a big deal. It was the first original Final Fantasy game on a Nintendo console since the Super Nintendo. Man, everyone I knew was hyped for it. But then I remember seeing that it was a party game similar to Gauntlet Legends, and you had to carry around some kind of bucket. What? That ain't Final Fantasy, said young Derek along with all his hard-to-please friends. Yep, it's a super shitty attitude, but it's the unfortunate truth. So here I am. Many years later, the time has come to finally give this game an honest try. So yes, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles is a dungeon crawler action RPG. There are multiple classes, multiple jobs, and this mechanic where you write letters and send packages back to your family and you need to keep them happy. But the story is that a miasma, basically an evil fog, renders the world uninhabitable without the strength of crystals to push it back. So, in order to explore dungeons, someone needs to be on bucket duty. It's a concept that doesn't really sound that great on paper, and playing solo I found it kinda boring. Unfortunately, you need GBAs and Link cables to even play 2-player, and it's not the best party game really. It's a lot to take in when you just jump right into it. The menus are a little confusing, but the base game is pretty simple and a lot of fun with other people. The intended way is for everyone to already have characters and import them into the game from separate memory cards, and I bet that's a lot of fun. It's a pretty good looking game for the system with a striking art style, but requiring the GBA and the Link cables to play multiplayer probably limited its appeal. But it's another reminder that just because something is different doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Pac-Man Vs. is a separate game bundled with the Player's Choice version of Pac-Man World 2. I was bamboozled into thinking that there was a standard box for it on eBay, and if there is, this ain't it. It's just a cover printed on normal printing paper in a standard DVD case. So I've not ever actually played Pac-Man World 2, but that's not why we're here. Pac-Man Vs. is a game where one player plays as Pac-Man and 3 people play as ghosts. The gimmick is that the 3 ghosts can only see a portion of the board, whereas Pac-Man, playing off of the GBA, can see the entire board. It's harder than you'd think to track Pac-Man down, but he pakus a trail of light behind him, and the ghosts can collect the fruit, which widens their field of view so they can spot him easier. If Pac-Man gets caught, the ghost who caught him gets some points, and they swap controllers and get to be Pac-Man next. First to either 7, 10, or 15,000 points wins. Mario gives narrated play-by-play, which is kinda weird until you remember that, yeah, this is a Nintendo exclusive. There's a wide variety of boards. Overall, it's an amazing party game with a lot of replayability. While I was playing this, I was thinking, wow, why didn't this come to the Wii U? And then I remembered Luigi's Ghost Mansion, a minigame in Nintendo Land, is extremely similar. But let's be real here. Luigi's Mansion is great and all, but it don't beat no Pac-Man. Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion. I think this one's pretty well known. By linking the two games together, you can unlock the ability to play the original classic NES Metroid, and once you have a completed game, that snazzy teal-colored fusion suit. I thought this was interesting. The look of the fusion suit changes color in the game. Here's Fusion Suit Samus at the end of Prime, and here's Fusion Suit Samus at the beginning of Prime. Fun fact, the Fusion Suit unlocks automatically on completion in the Metroid Prime Trilogy version for the Wii, but the original NES Metroid was removed. I mean, why give it away for free when they could charge you 500 Wii points on the Virtual Console? Now, here's the weird part. Neither follow-up Metroid Zero Mission or Metroid Prime 2 Echoes have extras linking to the GameCube. Linking Zero Mission and Fusion via GBA cables unlocks a picture gallery in Zero Mission, but I guess by the time those Metroid games came out, Nintendo was moving on to other things.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Like we said at the top, there are dozens of games that use the GameCube link cable, like Animal Crossing, Phantasy Star Online, Mario Golf, Fire Emblem, lots of Pokemon games. Maybe one of these days I'll figure out what the hell that Tingle Tracker thing in Wind Waker is, and finally see what them Sonic Adventure Chows are all about. So many games, never enough time. And this is just one of many fascinating Nintendo peripherals. We could talk for hours about this stuff. Well, hey, let's wrap this up. If you have any weird, ambitious, or unnecessary games or peripherals you'd like to see on Punching Weight, let us know in the comments below. Or hey, if you'd like to donate anything, we've got a P.O. box. We will gladly take your weird video game stuff off your hands. Stop Skeletons from Fighting is a Patreon-supported show and is made possible with every one of the radical people here. If you'd like to join their ranks, click the Patreon logo and pledge what you can. Be sure to check out our other videos and the Punching Weight playlist. Thank you so much for watching. Stay powerful. Video game peripherals. It's just useless junk to get you to spend more money, am I right? And Nintendo? They're one of the worst. Donkey Kongas, the N64 expansion pack, the DS expansion pack, the Wii steering wheel. I definitely got a balance board in storage somewhere, but who am I kidding? I'm not above throwing money at this kind of thing. I love this kind of stuff. And besides, sometimes you find a peripheral that really cuts through the hype and is truly something special. The GameCube Game Boy Advance link cable is maybe Nintendo's most successful peripheral after the Rumble Pack? This little guy connects your Game Boy Advance to your GameCube controller slot, works with either the GameCube or the Wii, and is the key to unlocking an incredible amount of bonus content. It's compatible with just shy of 60 games, which is pretty amazing considering the GameCube was a bit of a flop for Nintendo, selling less than both the original Xbox and the previous gen N64. I guess more developers were banking on their customers owning a GBA than a GameCube, which was a safe bet. I've previously talked about the games that require the link cable to play, but in this episode we'll be talking about the GameCube games featuring extra content unlocked with just a cable and a GBA system. No extra game required. Not everyone's got time for double games, Nintendo. Welcome back to Punching Weight, the show that celebrates the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary. And I've dug through my GameCube collection, and I'm ready to show you what kind of secrets are hidden behind the GameCube Game Boy Advance link cable. And now, onto the show. Again, link up. Link time. Get linked in. Wait, can't use that one. First off, we gotta start with one of Nintendo's best and most innovative games of the era, Animal Crossing. Seriously, what a unique gem of a game. There was just so much you can do. Plus, it worked with just about every major peripheral Nintendo had at the time. It came with its own memory card, supported the eReader, and of course, the GameCube link cable. About the only thing it didn't use was the broadband adapter and microphone, which of course would be implemented in future releases. You can actually do quite a lot with Animal Crossing by hooking up a GBA. The most major thing you can do is access the island. At the bottom of your town will always be a dock, usually a good place for fishing, but with a GBA plugged in, Cap'n shows up and offers to take you to a special island where it's always sunny and summer. Oh hey, it's been 68 weeks since I last went to the island. Wait, 68 weeks? That's not right. We just played this like a few months ago for the eReader video. Whoops! Anyway, the island has exclusive fruit, fish, and its very own villager. You can't do much there, but when you leave, you can keep playing on the island with your GBA. If you remember to leave treats and tools there, you can boss your villager around and have them do stuff for you. Yeah, chop that tree, and that tree too. Now relax and do some fishing. I got a little bit too into it and poked them too much, and they got sad and the music slowed down. but I gave him some fruit and that cheered him right back up. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, more fishing! There's a lot you can do on Animal Island. It's apparently how you farm certain rare things like the NES games. I mean, I have no idea. I just use the cheat codes. Come on, man. If you hate your island or want a new islander or are really impressed with your island, you can trade islands with a friend through the GBA link cables. Man, can you believe this game existed without the internet on the GameCube? It's always going to be so impressive to me how many really creative ways Nintendo got around that. There are a few more features in Animal Crossing though, like designing stuff on the GBA instead of in-game, which actually saves you a couple hundred bells. Nice. But the thing that I had no idea you could do is you could download and play NES games on your GBA, which means that not only is there an NES emulator inside of Animal Crossing, it's also like, well, it's like a Russian nesting doll emulator situation, right? Like, there's a game within a game and then shoved into another game system. Like, it's awesome. The only problem is that all the two-player modes have been removed, and Excitebike does not have the option to save your tracks, which actually makes sense. The NES games can't stay on your GBA once you turn the system off anyway. Some games like Wario's Woods don't work at all because it was a late-era NES game and is physically too big for the GBA's memory. Also, did you even know Wario's Woods was in here? Man, Animal Crossing is so cool.
Animal Crossing for Nintendo GameCube.
I just been fishing, you know?
It's time to talk Zelda. Now, we've already covered Zelda The Four Swords Adventures, which was basically the flagship GameCube link cable game. It came bundled with one, and each player requires one of their own for multiplayer. But it wasn't the only Zelda game with this compatibility. The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker has the Tingle Tuner. This is a 100% optional item that basically turns Wind Waker into a co-op game. Maybe it's just me, but I was kind of shocked at how well advertised this little inclusion was because no one I knew ever talked about it, and it feels like no one talks about it now, but it's really amazing. Getting the Tingle Tuner is itself a bit of a side quest. You actually need to release Tingle from his jail on Windfall Island, and then he gives you his GBA, Magic Transmitter. Wait a second. If Link got a not Game Boy Advance, then why the heck did Luigi get a not Game Boy Color? Hang in there, Luigi. I got stuck with my brother's hand-me-downs too. Your year will come, don't worry.
Luigi,
So, the Tingle Tuner lets Tingle act as your super guide. He has flavor text and info for just about everywhere you can go, and gives you fun little mini-games around the world, like, for example, I had to find all the benches in Windfall Island. It's not exactly riveting stuff, but you know, it works. He also finds you hidden rupees, which comes in handy with the items he can buy to help Link, like balloons to walk on the air, bombs, and whatnot. These items ain't cheap though, and the trailer itself admits that there's nothing really to stop your GBA partner from dingling up the Tingle Tuner.
Choose your friends wisely.
It also has its own side quest. Using the tuner, you can uncover 5 Tingle statues, and if you get them all, you'll rescue his brother Knuckle, who will upgrade the tuner. The Tingle Tuner was a super fun little extra that was unfortunately cut in the Wii U HD remake, which I guess they did because they wanted you to have access to the map on the Wii U gamepad at all times, even though it would have been perfect for the Tingle Tuner. So instead, it had the Tingle Bottle, which was actually a really cool idea, but no longer exists due to Miiverse dying. That means the Tingle Bottle Messenger was only available for 4 years. Man, the Wii U was a weird system.
Find secrets with the Wii U gamepad.
And did we mention togetherness?
Just check out the simulation.
Yeah, look like I've been upgraded.
Alright, so that's a couple of Nintendo games. How about we switch gears and talk about Sega games? During the GameCube days, Sega had just left the hardware business and had really hit the ground running. And it shouldn't really be a surprise that a company that loved making peripherals and add-ons as much as Sega would go a little bonkers with the GameCube link cable. Is it still... Oh, it's loading. Hold on. The GameCube link cable, Sega. Sonic Adventure now.
These load times.
Several of Sega's GameCube and Game Boy Advance games had GameCube link cable support, and they all mostly center around one thing. Chaos. Oh, sorry, not chaos. Chows. These little Tamagotchi-like creatures were first introduced in Sonic Adventure, and one of the coolest things about them was you could carry them with you on your Dreamcast VMU. Well, maybe you can, I can't, because my VMU batteries have been dead since the Clinton administration. A bunch of Sonic games for the GameCube and GBA featured a minigame that utilized the GBA, called the Tiny Chow Garden. Here's how it worked with Sonic Adventure DX. You can go to the Chow Garden, plug in your GBA, grab a Chow, and then go to the GBA kiosk. From there, you can transfer your buddy into the tiny Chow Garden, where you can feed them, play mini games, and level up your little guy's stats. Being able to take them on the go with the GBA emulates the Dreamcast VMU. See, I don't even need new batteries for that thing. But if you turned off the system or the batteries died before transferring them back to your GameCube, you'd lose all the work you did. Forever. However, Sonic Advance 1, 2, and Pinball Party for the GBA all have the Tiny Garden minigame too, and you can transport and save your little chows there as well. You don't actually have any of these GBA games, but it didn't matter because, and this is maybe the coolest thing, you can use the Tiny Chow Garden to transport your chow into other games, which is how we got this adorable Tails Chow. You see, Sonic games didn't have the market cornered on Sega Link Cable Extras. There are minigame extras in other games too, like my favorite Sonic Team series, Phantasy Star Online, or PSO. The GameCube version featured a 4-player split-screen couch co-op, which I played for dozens of hours in college. It's still one hell of a great game, and oh god, if I don't get back on track, I might get addicted to this game all over again. Anyway, there are 4 downloadable GBA games in PSO, and the easiest one to access is the Tiny Chow Garden, similar to the one in Sonic DX, though it's hidden away and extremely easy to miss. On the mission, the Fake in Yellow, after you finish the quest but before collecting your reward, warp back down to Forest 1 and walk up to the waterfall and surprise! It's a chow! Now head back up to Pioneer 2 and the same GBA kiosk from Sonic Adventure DX will be there. It'll only be loaded with Tiny Garden, but you'll be greeted by a Tails Chow. After poking and feeding him for a little bit, I put down my GBA, turned off PSO, booted up Sonic DX, went to the Chow Garden in the hotel, and transported Tails off my GBA and into my GameCube, and boom! My sweet prince had arrived! I then tried to feed him dark fruit, hoping to turn him evil, but it turns out Tails is just too pure. Also, I don't know anything about how chows work. But what about the other 3 unlockable Sonic Team minigames in PSO? Choo Choo Rocket Challenge, Knight's Score Attack, and Puyo Pop Endless version. Unfortunately, the Tiny Chow Garden is the only GBA minigame attached to an offline quest. To get access to the other 3, you need access to the online quests, which means you'll have to do one of the following. Get your GameCube online and on a server, which you actually can totally still do today thanks to some awesome fan communities, and complete the missions. Or get a copy of PSO 1 and 2 Plus, which has all online only quests available offline, but that game is rare and kind of expensive. Or you can just play them all in Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. Yeah, when was the last time you thought about this game? Big Boy Billy Hatcher was basically Sonic Team's last big new IP before diving full tilt into Sonic. And it's a pretty cool game. It has 5 GBA minigames that you unlock by hatching special eggs in various levels, and 3 of these minigames are the exact same as the ones tied to online quests in PSO. It took some doing to unlock them, but let's run down them by starting with Choo Choo Rocket Challenge. This is a 24-stage challenge mode with a good variety of stages. It's a really solid demo. However, they are the exact same stages found in the GBA version, just with way worse music. GBA Choo Choo Rocket is a great port of a great Dreamcast game, except the lack of buttons on the GBA makes the time-based stages extra stressful and, well, challenging. Really, the highlight of that port is the crazy amount of chill puzzles. This minigame is all time-based all the time, plus there's nothing really exclusive about it, so for me it was a bit of a letdown. Contrast that to the Puyo Pop minigame, which is probably my favorite one. This is basically just the endless mode from the Puyo Pop GBA game with the same 2 sub-modes. Task mode where you play until you run out of time, and normal mode where you play until you reach the top and die. And I mean die, you can't pause and quit to the menu, and you also can't turn off the system or you'll lose your scores. The controls feel kinda stiff, but otherwise this is a great get. I mean, it's classic Puyo Puyo, one of the all-time great puzzle games. It's nothing you can't find in any other Puyo Puyo game, but it's probably still the best minigame on either Billy Hatcher or PSO. But probably the most important minigame in this package is Knight's Score Attack. Knights is definitely one of Sonic Team's most important games, and it still blows my mind that for such an iconic Sega character, he's only had, I guess, 4 games, and one of them is a mini-game locked away in Phantasy Star Online and Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. Makes you wonder if there ever were plans to make a full GBA game. Overall, this is standard Knights fare. Collect all the gems and loops before time runs out. It's got great music, of course, and it looks pretty sharp. It's too bad there's just not much to it. There are only 4 stages that loop, and like the name implies, it's a race against the clock to get the highest score possible. It's pretty hard. It wants you to hurry up but also not miss anything, which is pretty tough when your character controls with the grace of a whale. Still, it's a neat little bonus for Knights fans out there. Of course, Big Boy Billy's got his own exclusive minigames, Billy Hatcher Hypershoot, which is sort of like a bowling billiards shooter kind of game that I actually really liked. Might go through the trouble of playing more Billy Hatcher to unlock the hard mode version. To unlock all these, you have to play through a large chunk of the game. It took me about, I guess 6 hours to unlock them all, though that's maybe because it was my first time playing in, forever. And there are worse ways to spend your time. Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg is rough around the edges with its controls and camera. It's also a pretty weird concept, but it's still pretty charming. It has great music and is one of the last flashes of that classic creativity from early 2000s Sega. It's kind of the end of an era and could use a remaster. I'd recommend it on its own merits as well as for these minigames. And speaking of ends of an era, Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc. This game with huge features also includes some pretty sizable GBA connectivity, giving the GameCube version an edge over the others. It's one of those rare games that has compatibility both with and without a corresponding GBA game, so I came prepared. I got both the GameCube and GBA versions, only I accidentally got myself the PAL version of the GBA game, and turns out you can't cross those streams. But I was still able to go to Seattle's Pink Gorilla and exchange it out for this little pink buddy over here. Thanks, Kelsey. And actually, some of Rayman 3's GBA connectivity isn't all that much to write home about. There's 2D Madness Mode, which is a fun throwback to the series' roots. It's kind of like a Rayman remake, but it was also featured in the PC port, so it's not exclusive. There is an exclusive minigame called 2D Nightmare, which was supposed to unlock when you beat all the levels in the GBA game, but there's a glitch that makes it so the GBA never registers the final level, meaning the only way to play this game is with a cheat device. Turns out that doesn't matter all that much because there are minigames you can play without the GBA game, and the Mad Tracks mode is probably the best example of multiplayer GameCube GBA connectivity, and straight up, one of the coolest co-op games I've ever played. Here's how it goes. The player on the GBA lays down track in Tetris-shaped chunks, dodges or blows up asteroids, while the GameCube player attempts to drive on that mess they've made. The pressure is on, you have a limited time, and pieces disappear only a few seconds after being laid down. It's fast-paced, and the driving controls are a little rough, but I think it adds to the madness of the whole thing. It's super fun. In terms of how to unlock it, I'd never actually played Rayman 3 before, and I gotta be honest, I was grumping hard on the way it controls, especially the camera. But I called in for some backup. I gotta give a shout to Nitro Rad for giving me some emotional support and telling me about this secret room on the first level. With that, I was able to very quickly get the 20,000 points necessary to unlock the Mad Tracks mode. There's also a 4-player version called Wildest, which puts 2 people on GBAs, and that sounds amazing! But that unlocks at 350,000 points. I had to decide for this video if I wanted to play a ton of Rayman 3 or Billy Hatcher, and no disrespect, but I went with Big Boy Billy.
Good morning!
If we're talking games where you don't need the GBA to have a good time, then my absolute favorite on this list is the legendary Dakar 2. Yes, Dakar 2, the world's ultimate rally. A forgettable sequel to an, I guess fine quality racing game based on a baller crazy real life race. It's a game I never thought twice about, and I'm gonna guess neither had you, but it has one of my all-time favorite bonuses, a full, unreleased GBA game with 12 maps, complete with 4 modes of play and 4 vehicles. God, I love this stuff. It's not a bad looking game, though there's no music, just engine noise, but the 4 vehicles all feel vastly different to drive, which to me feels like Acclaim spent a lot of time on this game. What I can't understand is why this wasn't released on the GBA. I mean, everyone was making games for that thing. Was Acclaim that broke in 2003 they couldn't afford to release a GBA game? Anyway, this mode is not even hidden, it's right there on the extras menu. However, the other 11 maps need to be unlocked in the campaign mode, and you can only download 1 map at a time, which makes sense. The GBA only had so much memory. I guess each map is smaller than Wario's Woods. Unfortunately for all you cheaters out there, the Unlock All Tracks cheat does not open these maps up. You still need to play and finish every level. But it's almost 2 full games in one. That's a hell of a lot to chew through. Man, first Top Gear Rally 2 and now this. What is it with forgettable rally racing games and having amazing special features? Like I said at the top, so many games support this thing, which means you'll find link cable capability in the weirdest places. Like a demo disc. The GameCube was not Nintendo's first disc-based system, but they somehow still did not understand the appeal of demo discs in the same way their competitors did. The GameCube preview disc is one of the very few demo discs released for the GameCube, and it was sold, yes, sold in stores, and was also a North American exclusive. And it's actually a pretty feature-filled disc, including a bit of link cable support. I mean, if you're only gonna make a few demo discs, you might as well go big, right? It's got some playable demos, trailers, a couple of which show off link cable capabilities, and 2 downloadable GBA games. We got the NES version of Dr. Mario, a classic. I'm not sure why exactly, but whatever. It's like the Animal Crossing NES games in that it's the full game, but only one player. I even tried downloading it to 2 separate GBAs and linking them together, but nope, no multiplayer. The demo disc also has this mouthful: WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games Trial Version. It's a trial run of the introduction stage of the very first WarioWare game, except it doesn't have the boss stages like the full game, and it starts to change games into fun advertisements. I love this series, and actually this demo is also downloadable on the Wario World GameCube game too. The actual weird thing though is that you can't get this demo on the actual GameCube port of the GBA game, but it does have link cable capability. It lets you hook up your GBA and use it as a controller. So you got controllers, but no demos? Wario, why are you so inconsistent and evil? And one last thing, for this video, we actually used our Wii as our GameCube and our GameCube running the GBA player. And well, did you know that the link cable is also compatible with the GBA player? Yes, you can use your actual GBA with the GBA player. Like, how amazing is that? Like, think about that. So, if you have a GBA player, a GameCube, a link cable, but not a GameCube controller, you can still enjoy your GBA games on the big screen for however long your battery lasts. By the way, the link cable covers up your charge port, so good luck with that. But actually, it's maybe not as dumb as it sounds. The GameCube's D-pad is so freaking small, playing off of an actual GBA doesn't sound so bad. The GameCube GBA link cable really is one of the greatest little gadgets released in this console generation. With cool stuff like this, it's sometimes hard to remember why the GameCube was such a bust financially for Nintendo. But from this device, you see the ideas that would grow into the DS, the Wii, and Switch. Man, no one fails better than Nintendo. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any unnecessary, weird, or ambitious games you'd like to see on Punching Weight, let us know in the comments below. Join the family at the Patreon, the specialist of thanks to all our Patreon supporters. And also, hey, don't forget all of our Stop Seldon's t-shirts and pins. Our merch is 50% off right now. All the links in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again real soon. Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons and Fighting. For almost 15 years now, I have been playing and enjoying and loving Resident Evil 4. It's one of the best action games ever made, it's one of the most important action games ever made, and it's personally one of my favorite games. I've bought it numerous times, but only recently was I able to truly appreciate Resident Evil 4, because of all the great things Resident Evil 4 gave to the world. It gave us the greatest controllers of all time, the chainsaw controllers. These are real. There's one for the GameCube, there's one for the PlayStation 2, and we're gonna break them down. We're gonna break them down here for you. It's Halloween time, spooky! Ignore the fact that I'm wearing a Splatterhouse t-shirt and I'm talking about Resident Evil 4, but you know what? I'm doing my Biggie Man impression. I got 2 chainsaws. 2 chainsaws. Hopefully this gets up before Halloween. Listen. Halloween's in here, okay? It's up here. And that's what that's the important thing. Before jumping into the gory details, let's just do a quick overview. These 2 chainsaws were made by Newbie Tech, with Capcom of course, in 2005. Now, these look like they would be part of an awesome pre-order campaign. These actually were not. Both of these versions of Resident Evil 4 had pre-orders, has cool special edition pre-orders. These were sold separately for about $50. They are on eBay now for a little more than that. Probably the best thing the Newbie Tech ever did. They made a lot of controllers before and after this, but this is maybe the high point for them. You could buy these and not even know anything about Resident Evil 4, and I wouldn't blame you because it looks so cool. I want to give a shout out though. David was very generous and donated this chainsaw to us. We're borrowing this from a friend. All right, let's get into this. Let's start with the GameCube model, because the GameCube version of Resident Evil 4 was the original. So let's start with this one. So first off, you got 2 handles. You can really grip this thing. I will say that it's very light. It's kind of hollow, but it really feels like a sturdy piece of machinery here. I feel like you can really manhandle this and it won't break. It feels really sturdy. So if you do buy one of these, it should probably be in good shape. The blood on every single one is different. I think a lot of them always have the fingerprints here because that's naturally where your fingers would go. But every single one of these, custom blood. Every single one has a number. There were 50,000 made. They'll have your number here at the bottom. 11,722 is this one. Let's talk about the buttons. Basically, this is the top of this would be the front of your GameCube controller. A, B, X, Y, start, C, D-pad, analog stick. Your L, R, and Z are located on the handles down here. So honestly, you're using the exact same fingers you would normally be playing if you were holding a GameCube controller. I feel like the Z button is the one thing that is kind of hard to hit, but that's not a huge deal for Resident Evil 4. But might be for other games. I want to get ahead of myself there. Really, this is a pretty sturdy, solid piece of machinery right here. This yellow model is based off of the burlap sack male chainsaw variant. And to be fair, in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface uses a yellow chainsaw. So the yellow variant is not only a reference to that particular enemy in Resident Evil 4, it's also a Texas Chainsaw Massacre reference. It originally did come with a big old case that made it easier for displaying. There's something about that case though. Inside the case is where they keep the cord that you need to actually plug this sucker in. So if you were gonna buy this controller and it does not come with the case, you might run into the problem that we did, which is we had this controller. We had no cord. We could not use it. Now to be fair, without this cord, it'll still look good on your shelf. Nothing wrong with that. But if you actually want to experience this, you need to get this cord. It is just a male-to-male GameCube controller cord that plugs into the bottom of this, and then into your GameCube. These cords don't exist anywhere outside of this controller. So if you were going to buy this, make sure it has the cord. If it doesn't have the case, that's fine. Make sure it has the cord. I want to give a shout out to Edmonds, the greater Seattle area. Another castle, our friend Tony hooked us up. I gave him a couple of GameCube controllers that were dying, and he made this custom cord for my Resident Evil chainsaw. Or my friend's Resident Evil chainsaw. This is the new cord for Jason. There you go, buddy. But about this cord. So, Newbie Tech promised, in the lead up to this, in a press release, that it was gonna have sound. And on the bottom of it, there's actually some space for sound. A little area, little air. Some air for sound to come out of. Why else would this be here? Controllers like this don't normally have a place where dust can easily get into it. I don't know if because this is a custom-made controller that the audio just isn't coming through, but playing this with Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, no audio ever came out of this. It vibrated, and that's fun. Vibrates when you get shot, vibrates when you shoot, but there was no sound that came out of it. I don't know if that's just the cord. There's space for a speaker inside here. I don't know anything about technical stuff. I don't think this makes any sound. I've looked up other people's videos. I haven't seen any videos of other people's GameCube chainsaws making noise, but maybe I'm wrong. So just a heads up. So you know Uncle Derek, he loves chainsaw controllers. Of course I do. Here's the secret. These chainsaw controllers, this GameCube chainsaw controller, is just a GameCube controller. It's just a fancy GameCube controller, which means you can play this with any game. And because of Super Smash Bros., the GameCube controller continues to exist. So if you have a Wii, you can play this with Wii games. If you have the Wii U converter for your Smash Bros. That worked on Wii U and works on Switch, this is compatible with Resident Evil 4 on the Switch. Yes, the Switch port does not have motion compatibility, but it does have GameCube controller compatibility. But don't lose focus here. What this means is this thing, throughout 4 Nintendo generations, can work with any game that has GameCube controller compatibility. Any game that lets you use the GameCube controller, you can plug the chainsaw. Play Killer 7 with a chainsaw. It's what Suda would want. Or go for my favorite, the stark contrast. Play something cute like Kirby's Air Ride with a blood-soaked chainsaw, or Klonoa. And before you ask, no, it does not work with Mad World. Remember, it has to have GameCube controller support to begin with. But I was looking for a reason to play some more Castlevania Judgment. The game's not that bad, actually. Also, GoldenEye, the GoldenEye reboot, sure. Bring this to EVO. I want someone to bring this to EVO and do some Smash with this. I want somebody to whoop ass with this. Somebody has got to have done that. I mean, I can't be the only person. If somebody has actually taken this to EVO and like there's footage of it, please let me know in the comments below. Because I cannot be the first person who thought to do this. Okay. So the red variant. Before making this video, I didn't even realize that these two versions were actually any different other than the red. It is a heavier model. We have reflective now, and again, custom blood like last time. Hold on, actually I need to plug this in and show you. Here's one of the reasons this is the better version. Yeah. Oh, I want to load a game. I better hit start. They mapped start to the pull cord. And also, this thing is like 15 years old. It still works. It still works. That's amazing. Okay, shut up now. And just like the GameCube cord, it is a male-to-male PlayStation 2 controller cord. Well, the PS2 cord barely fits in this case. It's a tight fit. A wild grace appears. Again, thank you, David, for the complete case here, man. It's awesome. Cord and the case and everything. So before making this video, I didn't even realize that this variant was so different. You have the pull cord. You have a redesigned handle. This handle kind of swings down this way. I think it's a little more comfortable. I like the blade on this one. It's like oval shape. It's fat. Kind of reminds me of fat old Pikachu. Back when Pikachu was... This is the Pikachu's Chainsaw Sona. And I guess this would be Raichu's Chainsaw Sona or Charizard's Chainsaw Sona. I don't know why I decided to bring up Pokemon and Resident Evil 4 together, but that's why you subscribed, right? And technically, because this is red, this chainsaw is modeled after the Chainsaw Sisters. So the yellow is the burlap chainsaw dude, and then the red is the chainsaw ladies. Oh, and of course in Resident Evil 7, the chainsaw fight you have with Jack, you both have the red and yellow chainsaws yourselves. Nice subtle reference there. Which means there is a Resident Evil protagonist that does use these chainsaws. Also, for the record, Leon never uses a chainsaw in Resident Evil 4. Video games are dumb. The one huge improvement this model has is the D-pad. If you will notice, the D-pad on the PlayStation version is tilted 45 degrees than the GameCube version. The one major problem I have with this is that the D-pad and the analog stick, in order to go up, you kind of have to push to, I guess, your right. But you hold the controller like this. That's how you hold it. This is how Leatherface was chasing people in the woods. This is how you hold a chainsaw, right? Moving is actually a little difficult. If you want to push up, move Leon forward, it's actually pushing this. It doesn't really make sense how you're pushing to your right to walk forward. Movement with the GameCube controller actually is kind of hard because of that. They fixed that with the PlayStation controller. It feels more natural to hold it with your hands like this and be able to walk forward. It just feels so much better. That being said though, both these controllers, the way the handles are, these are not the most comfortable controllers. You kind of have to reach with your fingers a little bit, especially with your left thumb to kind of get to the analog sticks and stuff like that. For some reason, start and select are up here. They should really be like down here, but maybe there just wasn't room for it. Oh, and I want to say thank you to David. Check this out, 228 of 50,000. Damn. So, drastically redesigned model. We have the pull cord, we have the better D-pad. Here's the big thing about this version. So you may have read that this has like motion controls, and not really. There's a switch at the bottom, turn that on, and suddenly you have end motion technology. But all that is if you listen, there's like a weight knocking around inside there. What that basically is, with end motion on, when you have the controller down, everything's fine. When you have the controller up, and it clicks, it pushes the R1 button for you. So you can play the game like this, but then when it's time to shoot, you raise your chainsaw, and then you can aim, and then you can shoot. The problem is that the weight is really sensitive. You can't play this like resting on your lap. It has to be completely vertical. Even if it's slightly horizontal, it'll click on and the R1 button, and Leon will be aiming forever. So you kind of have to sit at the edge of your seat and play with the controller like completely vertical, which I actually kind of hurt my back after a while. I didn't think it was the most comfortable way to sit. But here's the great thing about this, just like with the GameCube controller. This is just a PlayStation 2 controller, which means that this is an R1 press to pull out your gun in a lot of games. Any other Resident Evil game, any Silent Hill game, Grand Theft Auto, any game where R1 is an important button, guess what? You can use a chainsaw controller to really liven up your gaming experience. It works for any game. And of course, it don't stop there. With a converter, you can plug this into your PlayStation 3 and you can play Resident Evil 5 with the chainsaw. Play Dark Souls with the chainsaw. Use that end motion tech. Swing your blade in real life and in the game. You can raise your stance by raising your chainsaw in Bushido Blade. Truly put your relationship to the test with Adventures of Cookie and Cream with a chainsaw. Or also, hey, play Lollipop Chainsaw with the chainsaw. Also, I think this thing lets you hook up to your PC with the chainsaw on that. Listen. Life is so short. Put these chainsaws on as many systems as you can and have some damn fun for once. That's what I'll be doing. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Uncle Derek. This is Stop Skeletons from Fighting. These chainsaw controllers are really, really cool. I highly recommend them. Thank you, David and Jason, for letting us borrow this. Enjoy our Frankenstein cord. Welcome to the new outro. I had to shoot a new outro because for the first time in like 5.5 years on our last video, we put up the wrong thank you credits for our Patreon supporters. So here's an extra long, slow scroll for all the people. So I'm sorry. It is the first time in like the 5.5 years we've been doing this that we put up the an old thank yous crawl. So we have a new thank yous crawl here. This is the most recent thank yous crawl. Look at all of these names, all these people. We appreciate all of the people that have supported us over the years. And I also want to give a shout out one more time. At the beginning of the year, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if I had some fun, ridiculous controllers, and I appreciate that I'm now able to do a video on these controllers. So I hope you enjoyed this. Another romp through Resident Evil 4, another romp through awesome controllers. And if you want to support Stop Skeletons and Fighting on Patreon, it is only $1. It gets you early access to videos. That gets you to be in the chat room when we record our podcast. Lets you vote on new videos, new game club stuff, hang out in our Discord. It's only $1, but if you cannot support us because we know times are ridiculous and crazy right now, just tell a friend. When someone asks, what's the coolest, dumbest YouTube channel, you let them know it's Stop Skeletons and Fighting. Let them know it's Uncle Derek and Streets of Grace. It's Launchpad the Hot Dog Gamer. Hey, bud. Yeah, he wants me to stop filming and finish this damn video so that I can go play with him. And I'm gonna go do that. Thanks so much for watching. Stay powerful, wear a mask, wash your hands. I'll see you next time. Welcome to Punching Weight, where we celebrate the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary. And on this episode, we won't be talking about games, but a very special, very unnecessary peripheral, the N64 mouse. Yes, the Nintendo 64 had a mouse. It is real, it is official, it is beautiful, and I have no idea if any games actually use the damn thing. So, I have my bag, and we're going to test. You probably never knew the Nintendo 64 even had a mouse, and that's because it was neither sold by itself or sold outside of Japan. Similar to the Super Nintendo mouse, it was packaged with a game, Mario Artist. Mario Artist was basically a sequel to Mario Paint, but was exclusive to the Nintendo 64 DD, the disc-based add-on to the system that sold very poorly and never left Japan. But while the Super NES mouse was available separately in certain parts of the world, the N64 mouse is only available with copies of Mario Artist, and unlike Mario Paint, Mario Artist did not go on to sell a few million copies. So, flat out, not many Nintendo 64 mice exist. The idea of a console system having a mouse may seem odd today, but they were more common than you'd maybe think. Like we mentioned above, the SNES had a mouse packaged with Mario Paint, but was compatible with a handful of other games like Wolfenstein 3D. The PlayStation 1 mouse made games like Clock Tower, Alien Resurrection, and Quake 2 a considerably better experience, and the Sega Dreamcast not only had a mouse, but a keyboard too. Who needs a PC? I got the Dreamcast mouse and keyboard for Quake 3 Arena Online. Don't at me. I wanted to do this video because there's just not a whole lot of information about the N64 mouse out there. And after receiving a very generous donation, thank you Mr. McMuscles, I was duty-bound to do the heavy research myself. So, I got my games, I got the mouse, let's see what this weird, let's be honest, unnecessary peripheral can actually do. Oh, and because I've become something of a connoisseur of console mice lately, I'll be using my PlayStation mousepad. Okay, let's get started, and there is no better place to start than with Mario 64. Let's go.
Press start to play.
Mario 64. I love messing with Mario's face. Uh-oh. No start button. I can't actually start. This is not a good start for the N64 mouse. I was able to trick the game by plugging in an actual controller and then swapping out for the mouse. Okay, let's do this. Alright. Movement is actually pretty good. This thing is really sensitive, except I can't really walk. I had no idea what to expect, but it looks like the mouse emulates the analog stick, so dragging the mouse emulates holding the stick in a certain direction, which makes it really hard to actually go anywhere. My burger fell off. And the right and left buttons look to emulate A and B. So that means I can get around by jumping and kicking. Yeah, look out world, it's jump kicking Mario, ready to save all princesses. Oh no, my greatest foe, a pit. I have no doubt that a Mario 64 superfan could play this whole game while just jumping and kicking, but I can't. So it's not really possible to play the game, but the mouse technically works. Let's do another early title. Wave Race 64, one of my personal favorites. I remember seeing that water for the first time and thinking graphics can't get any better than this. It's still a fine looking game if you ask me.
Wave Race.
Jumped into the training stage to get my feet wet, and found the controls were pretty good. This thing is really responsive.
To start racing, select Start the Race from the pause screen menu.
But I ran into another problem. I can't leave the training stage and start an actual race because I don't have a start button to access the menu. I'm already noticing a pattern here. But when I got into the race, it wasn't too bad. The turning took some getting used to, but I was still able to get first place, though it's a little embarrassing to miss that many points on Sunny Beach.
Don't miss any more.
Again, looks like it's compatible but only uses the analog stick and A and B buttons. But Wave Race isn't as complicated of a game, so it's more compatible than Mario. Okay, the other system launch title, Pilot Wings 64. This game has more variety with each vehicle controlling a little different. Hang glider is just steering and landing, there's no problem with the mouse. Movement on the rocket belt is a little tough. The gyrocopter is impossible to turn around in. Birdman has a similar problem with turning around since you just can't hold the stick. Again, great precision. I always had the problem of overcorrecting in this game, and the mouse mitigates that, but it's overall not quite a better way to play. Okay, enough messing around. Let's get to the heavy hitters. Zelda Ocarina of Time, does it have special compatibility? And nope. Turned it on and it straight up said no controller. It didn't even register it, but using a controller and swapping when the game started let me use the mouse. So again, it's compatible, but with just light analog stick movement and the A and B buttons. This got me thinking, there are a handful of N64 games that exclusively use the D-pad instead of the analog stick. Mischief Makers is one such game, and sure enough, it's no dice. I can grab and jump, and that's all. Shake Marina, shake it Marina. I want you to shake it so bad, why won't you shake? Can't get her to shake anything. Yoshi's Story. Didn't even recognize the mouse. But again, starting with a controller and swapping seems to get around that problem. Yoshi's Story controlled pretty well, but without the Z button, there's no way to shoot eggs, so it's basically unplayable. Okay, so I'm starting to see a pattern. Games that registered the mouse, and even those that didn't register it right away, did so as though it were a normal controller, but a controller with only the A and B buttons and the analog sticks. So in a way, maybe all games for the N64 do support the mouse. They're just basically unplayable due to the lack of buttons. That pretty much removes any game that requires the Z button or exclusively uses the D-pad. But that just means we gotta get creative. Wave Race worked because the analog stick was for steering instead of actual movement. So let's try out a few more racing games. The most appropriate game for this video, Mickey's Speedway USA. Hey, it's a mouse controlling a mouse. And it controls pretty well. Again, the sensitivity is really nice on this thing, but there's no way to use weapons, which makes it not ideal. And I bet Mario Kart works the same way. Yep, it's about what I expected. No way to use items or power slide. Shame, because the control's pretty good. These games have too many buttons, that's why Wave Race works, so let's go with something a little more simpler. F-Zero X. This is actually pretty great. The control is amazing, but it's tough to take hard turns. And the lack of shoulder buttons means you won't be able to lean in for tight turns and would make the later tracks pretty much impossible. Nah, we gotta get simpler. Beetle Adventure Racing. Oh man, this game's great. And in the grand scheme of things, a much simpler game. It's just accelerate, brake, and handbrake. That is if you're driving automatic. Controls really well, managed to finish the first level in first place and get a lot of the secrets. Wide turns are still a struggle, and if I ever needed to shift into reverse or reset myself on the main road, I wouldn't be able to. But I was still able to maneuver around corners with just accelerate and brake. I'm sure selecting the car with the higher handling helped too, but overall, one of the more compatible games so far. Further proof that Beetle Adventure Racing is one of the best games on the system. We should move on to other genres, but racing games so far are the most compatible with the mouse. StarCraft 64, here we go. This was the game that spurred this whole video. I read online this game is totally compatible with the mouse, and it was released after Mario Artist, so maybe this is genuinely compatible with the mouse? Man, this is disappointing, but it's just like any other N64 game. The point and click feels great, but the interface is different than it is on the PC. Clicking onto units doesn't bring up the option to construct things. All that is done exclusively with the C buttons, and with no C buttons available, there's no way to build units or buildings, which basically means a big fat nope. Same thing for Command and Conquer. No Z button means you can't access the menu to build anything. It's a shame because the clicking and dragging feels so much better than it does on a controller. Oh no, the lack of a Z button makes it not compatible? Oh god, say it isn't so. No, Pokemon Snap, you'd be so good with a mouse. I want to take a picture of you, Pikachu. I want to take a picture of you so bad, Pikachu. Are there controller options? Z button setup, that's it? Man, this is legit bumming me out. This game should have mouse support. We just need a sequel to this game already. Now wait a minute though, controller options. There's one game I know of that lets you customize your controls any way you want, Doom 64. You'll need to use a controller to navigate the menus, but mapping forward, use, and run to the right click and shoot to the left click is great. Holy crap, you can even change the look sensitivity. The only problem is you can't change weapons. Whoops, so I don't want that chainsaw. And you can't strafe. But I'm sure it's possible to beat Doom 64 with only a shotgun, and I'm pretty sure there are plenty of Doom superfans out there that could beat this game with just the mouse, no problem. Alright, so that cheers me up a little after Pokemon Snap. Doom 64 turns out to be a rare breed. No other FPS since I had available had that amount of controller customization, so Duke 3D, Quake, James Bond, The World Is Not Enough are straight up not compatible because you cannot move shoot to a button other than Z. Though it only proves once again that Doom 64 is absolutely one of the best shooters on the system. However, there's at least one more shooter that doesn't use Z for attack, Hexen 64. By default, A and B are attack and jump respectively. If you don't mind dragging the mouse forward to walk forward, it's not too bad. You won't be able to look up and down or select and use items though. Still a viable way to play Hexen, I mean, if you like playing Hexen, which I don't. But you know what made Quake 2 and Alien Resurrection great on the PlayStation 1 was the ability to use a separate controller in tandem with the mouse. If there were a game with a dual controller support, you could just swap out one of the controllers for the mouse. And I happen to know two specific games that have dual controller support, GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. It's possible you didn't know this, but with two controllers plugged in, both GoldenEye and Perfect Dark give you the option to play the single-player levels with two controllers. It's the closest to dual analog controls on these old games on an actual N64. You first have to put in a second N64 controller so that you can choose the two controller options. Pick 2.4 style, unpause the game, swap the mouse on the controller in slot 1, and bam! You are playing GoldenEye or Perfect Dark with a keyboard and mouse setup with legit controllers on the legit hardware. But before you get too excited, it doesn't quite control how you'd think. The look is only ever solely mapped on the first player stick. Walk/turn and look/strafe are split between the two controllers for the other options. This is a nice reminder that console FPS controls wouldn't be perfected until later. And you can't remap shoot, it's always on Z, so I had to learn to shoot with my left hand. There's also no way to adjust look sensitivity, which by default is really, really slow. And finally, because the start button on the second controller doesn't function for some reason, accessing the menu will require you to unplug the mouse and plug the controller back in, which makes selecting gadgets on GoldenEye a pain. Still, it's the closest you can get to keyboard mouse style gameplay without emulation. You can do some pretty incredible things with the Game Shark, so I'm sure there's some way to hack GoldenEye to make it work better with the mouse. So if there's any hackers out there, get cracking, because maybe one day we'll be able to use this mouse like we ought to be using it. And it don't stop there, there are 3 more dual controller games I know of for the N64. First, Robotron 64. This is an actual dual joystick shooter and can be played with either 1 or 2 controllers. Psst, you could do the same thing on the NES version of Smash TV. And the mouse works great. Set the controller into port 1 and the mouse into port 2, set up the options as such, and go to town. The only real issues are accuracy, which isn't super important in a game where you can only shoot in 8 directions, and consistent fire, but the mouse is pretty sensitive by default, so it isn't too much trouble to keep firing. This may be the single most compatible game for the N64 mouse, but it isn't anything you can't already get with just another controller. Next, we have Sin and Punishment. This is an import game, by the way, and this one is tragic because while this game does support dual analog controllers, it doesn't offer enough customization to properly utilize the mouse. Now, you'd hope you'd be able to play the same way you play the sequel on the Wii, with the Wiimote aiming and the nunchuck moving, but the only controller option that moves fire off of the Z button also remaps movement to the Z and R buttons. So shooting feels great, but movement is basically impossible, rendering the game basically unplayable with the mouse. So close. And lastly, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Now, this is pod racing? Hidden behind a code, there's an option to play with two controllers, one in slot 1 and the other in slot 3, oddly enough. It lets you control each pod individually, so like some kind of virtual on racing game. This means it's the only game that could conceivably be controlled by two mice, making it possibly the dumbest way to play any video game. Oh, those Star Wars prequel movies just keep giving, don't they? But for dual controller games, those are the only 4 that I know of. At this point, I'm really running through my collection. I started double checking any game made after Mario Artist was released just to see if they would magically recognize the mouse. Conker, Majora's Mask, Paper Mario, and I had no luck. In the end, I tested about 30 games with the Nintendo 64 mouse and came back pretty much empty-handed. Now, that's not every game on the system and not even my entire collection, but it was a pretty good sample size. Again, technically every game might work with the Nintendo 64 mouse. There might be something out there that uses it better than Robotron, Doom, Wave Race, and Beetle Adventure Racing. So to wrap up, a true showstopper, Superman 64. That's right, start at the top, gotta finish at the bottom. Could the precision of the N64 mouse make this game good? The world needs to know.
Then there's no time to waste.
Nope, still sucks. Thanks for watching. Stop Skeletons from Fighting is a Patreon-supported show. Huge shout out to all our radical patrons here. Want to see your name here or get cool perks like early access to new videos, the SSFF Discord, and behind-the-scenes stuff? Head on over and pledge what you can. Thanks again for watching. Stay powerful. Oh, hey! Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons and Fighting. You caught me in the middle of some GoldenEye 64. I was just playing it on this monstrosity. That's right, you are not drunk. This is 2 N64 controllers time copped together. Yeah, where are my 90s kids at? That one was for you. You thought the N64 controller looked weird with 3 handles. How about 4 handles? This is an N64 controller you don't see too often, and that's because it is a custom-made piece bought off of Craigslist by one of our patrons who lent it to me, Patreon, enabling my compulsive controller habits for over 5 years. It is the left side of one controller smushed together with the right side of another controller. Getting up close, you can see where it was patched together, and they did a pretty good job. But the bigger question is, why? How and why would anyone make this? To make couch co-op more intimate? This was for the handful of dual controller N64 games, because the N64 did not have 2 analog sticks, but some games gave you the option to plug in a second controller and pretend you were playing with a PlayStation DualShock. But there are only 4, maybe 5 games that support this at all. This is Punching Weight, where we celebrate the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary, and I'm gonna take you through dual controller N64 games with the help of this Franken controller monstrosity.
Frankenstein's controller, because Frankenstein was the scientist.
Thank you, Grace. To understand why anyone would even conceive of something like this, you gotta take a look back at the mid-90s. The third dimension was coming in hard. We had games like Doom, Virtua Fighter, Jumping Flash, heck, even things like Toy Story and Donkey Kong Country. No one really knew what they were doing. The playbook for how to make and move a polygon in a third-dimensional space hadn't quite been written yet. The N64 controller is a physical representation of what a Wild West of a time it was. No one knew that dual analog sticks were the future. No one knew that this was the future. Now, I grew up with this controller, but I've seen a lot of confusion about how you're supposed to hold an N64 controller. Like, who's raising you kids? Seriously, if you don't know how to hold this thing, your parents do. There are some people watching this video, I'm old enough to be your father. I'm fine with that. The point of the N64 controller was so that it could be all things for all games, literally a stopgap between this and this. Alright, sit back and let Uncle Derek set you straight. Holding onto the two outside prongs gives your fingers an all-access pass for Super Nintendo style 2D controls, while moving one hand to the middle prong puts your thumb right on that analog stick, giving you delicious 3D movement. Or switch it up for left-handers. Or in theory at least, some games had the option to play like this. We're going to be talking about one a little later, but most flat out didn't use the D-pad at all. So once again, lefties totally left out in the cold. Honestly, Nintendo was trying to do a lot with the N64 controller. It wasn't the first console analog stick. I mean, technically, analog joysticks go as far back as the Atari, I guess. But there was the Saturn 3D controller that was bundled with Knights and the PlayStation Flight Stick. But this was the first one mass-produced in its time, and from this point on, analog became the standard. And if this design honestly still bothers you, there have been third-party redesigns for years, even to this day. Beyond being 3 controllers in one, don't forget Nintendo also went slot crazy, shoving things like the memory pack, the rumble pack, even the transfer pack into this bad boy. Appreciate this controller.
Appreciate it.
It hurts me a little bit when I see people dunk on this controller.
It's like we can acknowledge that it's...
Yeah, we can acknowledge...
It's kind of bad.
It is kind of bad and weird, but that's why it's beautiful. That's why it's beautiful, people. All right?
Yeah.
Now, overall, the Nintendo 64 was trying to cover all the bases, and it worked pretty well. 2D games like Mischief Makers, Kirby, and Dr. Mario used only the D-pad, but then there were games like Killer Instinct Gold and Mortal Kombat Trilogy that let you use either the D-pad or analog stick. We can all look back in this in hindsight and laugh because Mario 64, the very first N64 game, proved that 3D and the analog stick were going to be an essential part of gaming moving forward. But the N64 controller wasn't as forward-thinking as it could have been. It quickly became apparent that we needed that second analog stick for finer camera control and movement in a 3D space. Games made do, of course. Many games took a cue from Turok and used the yellow C buttons as the second stick, and it works, but like, does it really work? I mean, it'll do, but will it really do it? Is it really gonna do it to them? Which meant it was time to get weird. Rare has always been known for innovation, quality, and weirdness, and GoldenEye was them at their peak. Now there's a lot you can say about GoldenEye, but we'll be focusing on the controller options because this game is the first N64 game, if not the first console game period, to have dual analog support. Maybe, I don't know, probably. There might be some weird game on the 3DO, I don't know. First one that sold like 9 million copies, I'll put it there. I just want to talk about GoldenEye, 2 controllers, leave me alone. Now I found out about this by accident back in the day. If you plug in a second controller into slot 2, you can then pause the game, head to the options, and choose dual controllers. And then look at you, moving and strafing and shooting like a real big boy FPS. The world has been dying for a GoldenEye HD to at least be able to play with modern FPS controls, but dog, it's been there the entire time. Kind of. GoldenEye does bury the lead. It's mentioned briefly in the instruction book as for the true professional, but like, come on, my dumbass wasn't reading no instruction books back then. And also, that's pretty vague. I thought professional was playing on 00 Agent difficulty. What are you talking about? Also, fun fact, I learned this while we were filming, one of the demos, the title screen, shows them going into the options and turning it on. So not only was my dumbass too dumb to read a book, I also was too impatient to sit at the title screen. You thought I was dumb as an adult. Try me in high school. The options only appear when a second controller is inserted, so it's possible you didn't know you could even play this way. But honestly, the default controls on GoldenEye aren't too bad thanks to a generous auto-aim and it being a super polished game. We didn't really need that extra flexibility, but finding this on accident when I was stupid obsessed with this game in 9th grade was like the same feeling of spotting the secret island on the dam or the unused ladder at the beginning of the silo. Ugh, what are the secrets are hiding in this game? You ever notice how this looks like his jaw is real big? You ever notice that? There's a secret for you. Too many secrets in this game. Way to go, GoldenEye. I gotta be honest though, I never used the dual analog controls because while GoldenEye did predict the future, it didn't really nail it down. There is no button customization, just 4 pre-baked options and none plays like you would expect, or at least not without some further tooling. For example, 2.1. Left analog is forward, backward, turn left and right, and right analog is look up and down, strafe left and right. It's how the standard single controller controls work, and having a second analog stick doesn't really help. Really, you want to go with 2.2. You got look turn on the left and move strafe on the right, which is the opposite of normal controls. Usually move and strafe is on the left analog stick, so swap the controllers in your hands and eureka, modern dual FPS on GoldenEye. No hacks, no cheats, Rare was that close to nailing the future of FPS controls. Which makes this controller amazing. Like, it's almost like playing on a modern controller. Or maybe it is, like a gigantic modern controller. Was the Xbox Duke controller not big enough for you? Here you go. I mean, it's just fun to be like playing and then looking down at your hands and seeing this in your hands. Like, I'm not saying that the secret to happiness is weird custom controllers, but in 2020, I needed all the joy I could get. Now, I know people were squirming in their seats when I said that GoldenEye was Rare's peak because, hey, what about Perfect Dark? Well, Perfect Dark has the exact same controller options as GoldenEye, so switch to 2.2 and get to it! In fact, as it turns out, this is a better game to play with this mutant due to how the controls are wired on this. You see how there's only one start button? Swapping the first and second ports put the movement on the analog sticks where you'd want it, but it puts the start button on the second port, and for some reason, you can only access the menu with the player 1 start button, which makes no sense. What does it matter which start button I use? Now, thankfully, in Perfect Dark, you can just hold A to access your inventory for gadgets. That is not the case for GoldenEye, so with this thing, unless I wanted to be constantly swapping controller ports back and forth, all I could do was just run around and shoot enemies until I died. Which is still a lot of fun anyway. I bet whoever made this didn't think there would ever be a need for a second start button. I wonder if this is the reason the controller found its way to Craigslist. But anyway, normal dual controllers work great, and seriously, it's worth it enough to play these two classics again, if only for the novelty of doing it on two controllers. Hey, there are worse reasons to play GoldenEye or Perfect Dark again. But dual analog also got some love outside of Rare. There aren't too many others, but Robotron 64, the N64 port to the arcade remake first released on the PlayStation 1, even automatically configures you for dual analog play if you have two controllers plugged in at the start. Seriously, two controllers plugged in, just turn it on, hit start, and you are going. And it's still a solid dual joystick shooter, and that dated techno soundtrack, I love it. I'm not sure if this feature was actually advertised though, it wasn't on the back of the box at least. I learned about this thanks to magazine reviews I was reading at the time, one of the few times I was reading back then. It works great with the Franken controller, I kinda like it better with this thing. I just feel a little more coordinated when my hands are closer together, but sadly, this game does not have true multiplayer. While there is nothing stopping you from 2-player, 4-controller action with GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, Robotron instead makes friends take turns. Of course, this is a misnomer. There are no friends in Robotron 64. Our next dual analog game is a technicality, but one I still want to bring up. Sin and Punishment, one of the most legendary import N64 games, was actually developed by Treasure to be played on the left-handed position. Hey, there you go, lefties! But for some reason, when you plug in a second controller, the second slot mirrors the first, but only the analog stick and the B button, meaning you can move your crosshairs and shoot, but nothing else. Now, this game had a long development, and Treasure was also a super innovative company. It would have made sense for this game to have dual controller support, similarly to how the Wii sequel played on a classic or GameCube controller. What we may be seeing here is unfinished controller support programmed in? I don't know. And it makes me wonder if there aren't other stealth dual controller games on the system. I at least went through all of my other FPSs and nothing else magically started working with the second controller. Maybe this is just a weird edge case. Or maybe actually there are other games on the system that have stealth dual controller options? I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that no one else was dumb enough to try throwing a second controller on with random N64 games. Or maybe they have, and this is just a weird edge case. I don't know. Our final game legit had dual analog support, but unlike GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, you won't find this in the manual. Like all the others, it's hidden away, but this time I do literally mean hidden. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer has dual analog support, however only with a cheat. While holding Z and by pushing L, spell out RR Dual at the name input screen and the game will control completely different. And don't forget to move it to slot 3, for some reason it doesn't work in slot 2, I don't know. Now, instead of simply accelerating the whole rig with a push of a button, each analog stick will control the engine separately. Yes! Cheats were that big of a deal in the 90s that developers would actually hide a whole new mode behind one. I've actually never been the biggest fan of this game, but the dual analog adds a whole new element to play. It's definitely a really unique way of playing a racing game. With old Frankie Weenie here, it's great. In fact, having your hands closer together, I think feels even better. Listen, it's a pretty dumb way to play pod racing, but it is not the dumbest way. I've told you what you can do with dual controllers. What about dual N64 mice? Mices! I got 2 mice now! Next time, we return to the N64 mouse. Because I got 2 of them now, baby! stay tuned. And a special shout out to our Patreon supporters. Stop Skeletons and Fighting is a Patreon supported show. These two things are both lent to us by our Patreon supporters. By the way, if you were curious, that's what that box of Mario Artist is. We have a lot of plans for 2021. This is our last video for 2020. It might actually be coming out in 2021, but we're shooting it here in 2020. We're gonna be moving again, so look forward to that. But hey, thank you for giving us something to do this year. Hopefully we've been able to share some positivity and some good entertainment to you through 2020. And also, I have had a thing to occupy my brain by working on these videos, so I hope you've liked the videos we've made. We appreciate having an audience to entertain. We have supporters on Patreon. Please support us if you can, but if you can't, just tell your friends about Stop Skeletons and Fighting. When they say, what's the dumbest YouTube channel out there? Tell them about Uncle Derek and tell them about Stop Skeletons and Fighting. That is gonna do it. Happy New Year. I'm ready to start a new year. Hopefully this next one won't be, it can only go uphill from here, right? It can't get worse. Either way, we will be making videos. We are gonna get dumber. We're gonna get dumber. And we'll see you next year. Take care. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and stay powerful. Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons from Fighting. I have a problem. See, I have a fascination with console mice that cannot be sated. It was a time when the only thing that could fill the chasm between PC and console games was, well, a billion different ports of Doom, but also console mice. My mouse obsession actually all started with this girl right here, the N64 mouse, which was actually a gift from Matt McMuscles. Yeah, what happened? You ruined my life! The N64 mouse is in a class all of its own because of one very important thing. It can work with any game. Yes, whereas the PlayStation mouse and Dreamcast mouse only work with games that have mouse compatibility programmed into it, the N64 mouse mimics the controller, meaning it technically works with every game, which opens the door for so much dumb fun. My favorite kind of fun. Oh, and what's this? Uncle Derek's got two N64 mice? There was a time I never thought I'd ever see one. Now I got two. That's right, Patreon is enabling me yet again. That's patreon.com/bury Uncle Derek and console mice, literally making Scrooge McDuck dive into a pile. .html. This is Punching Weight, where we celebrate the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary, and as YouTube's unofficial console mouse czar, it is my duty to take another deep dive into the N64 mouse. Join me. So the last time I made a video on the N64 mouse was over 3 years ago, so I'm gonna go over some of the basics again. Plus, thanks to one of our Patreon supporters, I can now show you this. If you've not ever heard of the N64 mouse, that is because this was the only way Nintendo sold it, packed inside Mario Artist, basically a Mario Paint sequel, made for the Japan-only 64DD. The 64DD flopped super hard and only 100,000 were ever made, so it's possible that only 100,000 copies of Mario Artist exist and only 100,000 N64 mice exist. Maybe less. And I'm not even trying to flex here, I am sad that more people cannot experience this thing. The mouse was made to give you more nuanced control for drawing, and this is why the system treats it like a normal controller, making it technically the most compatible console mouse ever, which means the rest of you are all trash. Now here's the fun part. The N64 mouse only has 3 inputs. Left click, right click, and the ball. Okay, that's technically 360 plus 2 inputs, which amounts to just the A and B buttons and the analog stick. And really, an analog mouse design isn't too different from how analog sticks track movement, so it's no surprise it offers smooth and nuanced movement, which is great and all, but it leaves out, you know, the rest of the N64 controller. No C buttons, no L, no R, no D-pad, and most importantly, no start or Z buttons. Plus, in most games you hold the analog stick to move, and to do that on the mouse requires some aggressive swiping. Which means the N64 mouse has some problems. Look, this was the era of 3D, when games started getting more complex, leading to a full-on button bonanza. A lot of N64 games use a lot of buttons, and unfortunately, not a lot of those games let you customize button layouts. There are so many, and I mean tons of games, that would be perfect with this thing, but they are not. Again, due to a lack of buttons and the inability to customize those buttons. StarCraft 64 recognizes the mouse and it feels great, but you need the C buttons to build units. Command & Conquer also recognizes it, also feels great, but you need the Z button to build units. I mean, that's actually enough to get you through the first mission. Hey, that's that. Knife Edge would be a perfect game, but when you move shoot off of Z, you also move the movement off of the analog stick. Curse you N64 controller and your versatility. Same goes for playing as Floyd in Jet Force Gemini. Bet that is the first time you've heard that name in a while. A lot of you asked about Resident Evil 2, and I'm sorry to be breaking hearts here, but it does not work because you need the R button to ready your weapon. But there is a non-tank control option, so no one can stop you from attempting the dumbest pacifism run of all time. Now, sometimes you can fake out the N64 by swapping controllers mid-game, like for Pokemon Snap. Change Z button to switch instead of hold in the options, and once you press Z, you can swap out for the mouse, and it controls amazingly well. But you can't use items, nor really turn very fast. New Pokemon Snap better have some f***ing gyro controls. Sometimes it can just be an extra challenge, like for example, you can beat Mario 64 with a mouse, meaning you have no camera control and pretty limited movement, but I've seen it! It can be done! That's ultimately the beautiful thing about the N64 mouse, its limited capability. Make your own fun. Last time we talked about the dual controller options for GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, which apparently a lot of you didn't know you could do at all. Well, what if you swapped one of those controllers for a mouse? Yes, mouse aiming on GoldenEye and Perfect Dark on official Nintendo hardware. No hacks, no cheats. This is 100% legit. However, you won't be able to access your inventory in GoldenEye since you won't have a working start button. Why the start button always gotta be gatekeeping my fun? But it's still a lot of fun to play these games this way. After a few minutes, I was nailing some pretty solid headshots, even in GoldenEye where you do not have crosshairs. Now, unfortunately, you cannot do dual mouse. I mean, you can, but even I don't think it's worth it. You can walk about awkwardly and threaten enemies, but they don't really respond well to threats. And I just can't let these Datadyne scrubs disrespect Joanna like this. She's Perfect Dark. She's perfect, come on. I want to have an update for the dual controller episode we did last, Sin and Punishment. Now, I was surprised to see that this game had dual controller support, though it didn't really work, and I didn't really understand why it was there at all. Turns out, it's a stealth cooperative mode. It allows the second player to only move the cursor and shoot, while player 1 focuses on movement and jumping. Actually, if my Japanese wasn't so rusty, I'd have been able to figure this out on my own in the instruction book. Harada-sensei, I have failed you yet again. But what this means is co-op action with the mouse. A fun fact, the Wii sequel, Star Successor, has a very similar two-player mode. It's almost like Treasure, one of the N64 game to be played with the mouse. So we've already covered dual controllers, but man, what about dual mice action? I can finally fulfill my dream of 3 years ago because 2 mice? Now this is pod racing. After putting in the cheat code, the door is wide open for an alternate way to control your pod where you control each engine separately. Now this control scheme was unchained from behind a cheat code in future releases of the game, but you can't play with 2 mice anywhere else, I'm pretty sure. With each mouse controlling separate engines, I do kind of feel like I'm pushing and pulling levers to control the pod. It's like I'm really there. I'm really baby Anakin. But you'll need a lot of table space to move the mice up and down, and I don't think there's any way to get boost going, and it's kind of really hard to play this way. It's bad, but I had fun. It's really dumb, but I had fun, I don't know. It actually works a lot better in Robotron 64, which kind of makes sense because the Robotron series was meant for dual analog sticks. But also, Robotron 64 is kind of special. It's one of the rare games that doesn't require a start button to get off the title screen. That is a very common problem, trust me. I love playing this game with the mouses, because it lets you feel how sensitive the trackballs are. And not only did the PlayStation version not have dual controller support, it didn't even have mouse support. Superior version! Okay, so there aren't that many dual controller games and even fewer dual mice games, but Uncle Derek is not afraid of a challenge. He's gotta get creative. And the answer is multiplayer. Playing an N64 game with the mouse severely minimizes your ability to play that game as it was intended, but what if you and a friend could level the playing field together? Of N64 multiplayers, you probably think we're gonna go right back to GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, but I'm gonna let you in on a secret. There's a better rare game for multiplayer mouse action, and that game is Banjo-Tooie. I don't know how many people know this because it doesn't seem like anyone talks about it anymore, but Banjo-Tooie actually had FPS sections unlocked as multiplayer modes. Now, I've always enjoyed these because a lot of the maps are heavily influenced by GoldenEye. Clinker's Cavern is almost a completely reskinned complex, for example. Now, Banjo-Tooie has no controller customization, meaning with the mouse, you aren't able to fire any weapons. However, you are able to have beak duels to the death. turn on one-hit kills for the most dramatic Bushido Blade style game that you can play with the mouse. Slappers only ain't got nothing on this. Banjo-Tooie is technically an example of an N64 FPS working with a mouse. And I say technically because there's no shooting. It's not an FPS. It's an FPB. First person birding. First person bird beacon. It's its own thing. And unfortunately, there aren't that many others. The best FPS with a mouse is still Doom 64 for those in the know because it has total button customization, but it's only one player, so you can sit this one out, old friend. Rest well. The real hotness here is Quake and Quake 2. They both have pretty good button customization, though not as robust as Doom 64's. You can customize the controls and make both Quakes playable with a mouse. I mean, they're not good, but they are playable. But if you level the playing field and bring in a friend, now you're talking. I mean, we can barely move, but we can barely move together. Quake 1, however, is only 2-player and only has like 4 maps. It's a solid port, but it's pretty underwhelming for deathmatch. Now Quake 2 has more maps and it's 4 players. So, if you happen to have 4 of these incredibly rare mice lying around, you can really go nuts. And this means that technically, both console ports of Quake 2 are 4-player mouse compatible. And also I want to make sure this is clear. Please don't send me any more mice. I'm afraid I'm gonna get put on some kind of list. And also, Uncle Derek is fine. If you got mice lying around, give them to somebody. I don't need any more mice. Thank you for the offer. Don't send me any more mice. I'm good. Unless you got the TurboGrafx 16 mouse, then DM me, please. Nice, thank you. Nice, thank you. What did I say? Nice. And that ain't the only 4-player shooting you could hypothetically do with 4 mice. Bust-A-Move 99. There are 2 Bust-A-Move games on N64, and Bust-A-Move 99 is 4-player. And with the mouse, it controls excellent. It's really, really good. I wouldn't quite say it's as good as a controller. It's hard to do really wide, quick swings. And if you suck at lining up your shots, well, you'll still suck at lining up your shots. But I don't know, I had a lot of fun playing this with a mouse. It works really well. But you know, there actually are quite a few 4-player mice-capable N64 games. And when you think about the quintessential 4-player experience, the ultimate melee of different characters, styles, and genres coming together for a full-out brawl, you of course think Fighting Force 64. I mean, there's so many unique characters, like the guy, the big guy, Lady 1 and Lady 2. Yeah, we bare-knuckle raging all up and down these streets. Take that, hot dog. Okay, I'm just kidding. We're talking Smash. That's right, I saved the best for last, and I am not joking. With just the analog stick, A and B buttons, you can totally play Super Smash Bros. But that means no blocking, and up B is really hard. The platform challenges are really hard to do, but it's absolutely playable with the mouse, and in fact, I think it's super fun. I streamed a whole playthrough of it on my Twitch channel, which is, as of this video, I think the world record mouse-only speedrun of Smash 64. Technically, it's the first, so whatever. You can watch the whole mess on our Twitch archive channel. You check it out, it was a lot of fun. We've taken this on the road, so to speak. I have brought my N64 mouse and Smash Bros to conventions over the years, and I've had fans play each other. What I would do is at the end of our panel, I would ask, who's a Smash expert and who's a Smash novice? And I would give the expert the mouse and the novice the controller. And it was a pretty even and super entertaining match every single time. The only problem is when you're playing this with 2 mice, you need a start button to actually leave the character select screen, but once you're in the game, it is some amazing, dumb fun. Like, genuinely, I cannot say this enough. I cannot wait to do this all again when we're able to go outside again. The N64 mouse is just a beautiful thing. If it were possible to mass produce this thing so that more people could experience Smash Bros and other games in a new way, it would just make the world a little brighter. And if they could also like bolt on like a start button and a Z button, like holy shit, I'd buy 100 and then give them away like Santa Claus. But I think that's enough mouse talk for now. More mouse videos are definitely gonna be happening in the future. In fact, we got like so much stuff planned in the future. I'm not sure if you noticed, the set behind me here looks a little different. That's because we moved again. And if that doesn't have to happen again, we got a bunch of awesome stuff for 2021. It's gonna be my year. This is gonna be a year, damn it. We got so much stuff planned, and if you like to support the show, again, one of our Patreon supporters let us borrow this copy of Mario Odyssey and their second mouse. Thank you so much. You can support us on Patreon, or just like tell a friend, subscribe, like us, tell us, if someone asks, hey, what's the best and dumbest YouTube channel? It's Stop Skeletons Fighting. Tell them about Uncle Derek, and tell them about Producer Grace. And you know what? Thank you so much for all these years. And you know what? New year, new dog. We have a new dog. Just everyone say his launch pad here. Everyone say hello to Dollop. This is Dollop. Listen, surround yourself with dumb games and cute dogs. I don't got the secret to life, but I do know that like dumb game stuff and cute dogs will probably enhance your life a little bit. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again real soon. Stay powerful. The Nintendo 64 Transfer Pack. Best known as that thing that came with Pokemon Stadium, its usefulness outside of that was pretty thin, but this is classic Nintendo really. I think the thing we forget when we talk about Nintendo and their various wacky peripherals is that Nintendo was first and foremost a toy company. Then they became a toy company that makes video games. And just like a toy maker doesn't expect something like LOL Surprise to be hot for longer than a season or so, Nintendo has a habit of not committing to its peripherals for very long, and the N64 Transfer Pack is a classic example. It's a good idea, implemented too late to be useful to anyone except Pokemon superfans. On top of that, there's the risk that you might delete your Game Boy data, and it would soon be replaced by the next big thing. But it was one of the only ways you could connect Game Boy games to the Nintendo 64. We just needed to uncover all its secrets. So welcome back to Punching Weight, the show where we take a look at the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary. And we're gonna put an emphasis on unnecessary by taking a look at the Nintendo 64 Transfer Pack. First, let's lay down some context. The Nintendo 64 came out in 1996. The system's 3D capabilities, as showcased by Mario 64, were a revelation, a benchmark for what the third dimension could be for an industry still working out the kinks. But at the same time, Nintendo had a problem. Its portable Game Boy system, originally released in 1989, hadn't had a meaningful hardware update in over half a decade. Interest in the system was waning, and it didn't really fit in with Nintendo's focus on the future of gaming. There was no reason to care about 8-bit monochromatic two-dimensional games, so a Game Boy player for the N64 was never in the cards. At least it wasn't before a little game called Pocket Monster, aka Pokemon, ruined everything by becoming the most successful thing on the planet. That's not to say the N64 didn't have its own problems. While the system itself was successful, Nintendo's future focus wasn't completely successful. We're talking, of course, about the Japanese-only disc-based add-on, the 64DD. While this was a truly innovative piece of hardware that we're still seeing the effects of today, the N64DD flopped so hard in Japan that Nintendo literally scrapped it for spare parts. We've made a couple videos about the 64DD's orphans, and the Transfer Pack falls into that camp. Kinda. The Transfer Pack was showcased at Nintendo Space World 1999, and here's a picture of it. Yeah, that was called the Transfer Pack, but that's clearly different from what the Transfer Pack actually was, and looks a whole lot more like another peripheral we made a video about, the GameCube GBA Link cable. Basically, Nintendo was going one way with the next-gen technologies of the N64, but the public was pulling them another way with the aging tech of Pokemon. And that's why we have the N64 Transfer Pack. It's a panicked stopgap between these two technologies. And now that we got all that out of the way, let's actually talk about the uses of the Transfer Pack, which, let's be honest, were mostly about Pokemon. Though it wasn't the first game to use it, we'll talk more about that in a second. The Stadium series is why most people are interested in the Transfer Pack, and probably the reason they have one in the first place. The Transfer Pack was originally bundled with Pokemon Stadium 1, though you could later buy it separately. To use it with Pokemon Stadium, you need to plug your Pokemon cartridge into the Transfer Pack, then plug your Transfer Pack into the controller, and then turn on the game. You actually have to be this careful or you run the risk of losing your Game Boy data. Pokemon Stadium will then give you the option of using your data, aka the Pokemon you've caught, and their current stats in the game itself. Here's the kicker though, the Transfer Pack is not essential to playing Pokemon Stadium. The game has a rental system that makes importing your own Pokemon totally optional. But you could also use this to fight your friends in 3D, assuming they also had a Transfer Pack, trade Pokemon, and even take pictures of your Pokemon and print them out on the Game Boy printer, which is a pretty big upgrade from printing out my Pokemon Snap cards at a damn Blockbuster kiosk. You could also use it to get Pokemon with rare movesets into your Game Boy roster. For example, if you beat Pokemon Stadium with a copy of Pokemon Yellow, you can use it to teach Pikachu Surf, which you can then transfer back into Yellow to unlock a whole new minigame. How cool is that? Pokemon Stadium 2, which came out worldwide in 2001, added compatibility with the second generation of Pokemon games and updated some other features. You could now trade items between Pokemon carts, use Pokemon Stadium for mystery gifts, look at and redecorate your room in 3D, and a couple other miscellaneous things. But the coolest transfer pack feature in the Stadium series has got to be the Game Boy Tower. This allowed you to actually play your Pokemon games on your Nintendo 64. It's got Super Game Boy borders, and if you've unlocked it, there's even 2 speed-up modes that let you play your game at twice or thrice-ish times the speed. Isn't it mind-boggling that there's an official Nintendo emulator that let you play one of its most treasured franchises in a way that it wasn't designed to be played? So this brings up the question. There was the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, and the Game Boy Advance player for the GameCube. Was this the same thing for the Nintendo 64? And the answer is officially no. But technically, kinda. The transfer pack is functionally just a handshake device that allows you to connect a Game Boy game to the N64 controller. It doesn't have Game Boy hardware in it per se. Really, I think the star of the show here is the N64 controller, which actually does the work of transmitting Game Boy game data to the N64's RAM, where it can actually do things with it. The Stadium games are the only games with a player feature, and it's designed to only work with Pokemon games. However, that doesn't mean it can't not work with Pokemon games with a little bit of elbow grease. In 2014, game hacking enthusiast Mesmerize was able to hack ROMs of Wario Land 2 and Super Mario Land so that Pokemon Stadium would think it was playing Pokemon Blue, meaning you can disguise Game Boy games and smuggle them past Stadium's security checks. Which, how cool is that? But it was just a proof of concept. This method doesn't make it a fully working emulator on the N64 because there were some issues with saving the game, and also it's not really efficient to have to hack every Game Boy ROM to get it working. It would be a lot better if we could go to the source and just edit out the code that prevents other Game Boy games from working with Pokemon Stadium. Also, side note, there seems to be a lot of debate within the hacker community around if Pokemon Stadium even has a fully working emulator inside of it. Okay, maybe not a lot. The hacker community is probably focused on more important things, but there are rumors that it has Pokemon Game Boy data on the cart as a way to speed up load times, but we reached out to Mesmerize and they double-checked it for us and found no evidence of Pokemon Game Boy code in Pokemon Stadium. There are other reasons to think it's a full emulator, like it was able to read Super Game Boy border data for Wario Land 2, and secondly, and this is getting pretty technical, when the Game Boy Tower is checking to see if it's playing a Pokemon game, it's just checking the header, and that's it. It's not looking for other specific Pokemon code. And after all this, the most shocking fact to me is that this game is almost 20 years old, and there's still tons of ground to be broken here. We don't even have time to dive into things like Pokemon Ace hacks, but it's safe to say that the Pokemon Stadium games have yet to be fully cracked. So, the Pokemon Stadium games were the most famous uses of this wayward Nintendo peripheral, but there were actually 4 other pairs of games that used the transfer pack outside of Japan. Yeah, that's it, 4. But as you can probably tell from how much time is left on this video, there's still a lot to talk about. So let's move on, shall we, to the first transfer pack compatible pair of games, Mario Golf. Released in 1999, ahead of Pokemon Stadium and the actual transfer pack, their compatibility wasn't very well publicized. It's not even in either manual. But even though Pokemon Stadium wasn't out yet, Mario Golf superfans still had the option to import the transfer pack from Japan in the meantime, since the device itself isn't region-locked. The N64 and Game Boy Color Mario Golfs are really different from each other. They're both still golf games, but the N64 version is more a party game with a large roster of Nintendo characters and mini-games to play with your friends, and the Game Boy Color version is more of a light RPG meant more for solo play. For the record, Mario isn't even unlocked at the start. It's called Mario Golf! False advertising! And an RPG campaign for the Game Boy Color game might sound a little weird, but don't forget this was made by Camelot, whose resume included Shining Force and would later go on to make Golden Sun. Here's how it worked. You can transfer your Game Boy Color campaign character to one of the 4 transfer slots on the N64 to play in N64 tournaments and minigames. Doing so builds up their experience for when you bring them back to the Game Boy Color. Beyond the characters, there's literally a menu for showing off your N64 scores on your Game Boy Color so you can share your records on the go. And that's about it. But we need to clear something up. While researching this game, we heard all about how you can use the transfer pack to unlock 4 exclusive characters on the N64 version, but that's not really true. There are 4 character variants that you can choose at the start of the Game Boy Color campaign. Basically, Kid Adult Man, Kid Adult Woman. These 4 character models are in the N64 game, but as soon as you take out the transfer pack or turn it off, poof, They're gone from the N64. This feature is only there so you can level up your character while you're away from your Game Boy Color. On top of that, you can't bring over all 4 characters at once when you connect your transfer pack, since there are only 3 save slots on the Game Boy Color, meaning you'll always be 1 slot short. So really, this is for a group of friends all playing Mario Golf separately and then coming together to throw down. Needless to say, these Game Boy Color characters are not available on the Virtual Console release of Mario Golf 64. But that's okay because that's not really what they were designed for. Their base stats aren't great because they're intended to be leveled up more powerful than the other characters. It's a cool feature to be able to build a character across 2 games, but that's just about all that you can do is pretty underwhelming. Our next game is the Mario Tennis Pair, which, let's be real folks, is most notable for introducing the world to our Lord and Savior Waluigi, who, side note for those uninitiated, was only created because Wario needed a doubles pair, but Nintendo thought an evil princess was too unseemly, a wrong that wouldn't be righted by the fans until 2018. The Mario Tennis games were also made by Camelot and are a similar party game RPG split. The difference though is that its transfer pack features are way more robust. You can even bring over all 4 campaign characters from 1 cart at once, and they stay on the N64 cart. But there's bigger fish to fry here. Both of these games unlock content on the other game, and it's a significant amount of content. If you transfer data from the N64 to the Game Boy Color, you will unlock a slew of characters and their minigames, which is cool in and of itself, but if you complete these minigames, you can then transfer that data back to the N64 and unlock new courts. This makes this pairing one of the most significant transfer pack games, and it also renders their Virtual Console re-releases nearly a shadow in comparison, but especially the Game Boy Color version. Without the transfer pack, Game Boy Color Mario Tennis only has 4 Mario characters: Baby Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Mario, aka the most basic Mario characters. No Waluigi? No deal. 1 star. It also means 5 fewer minigames on the Game Boy Color and 5 fewer courts on the N64. It's an extra bummer because the transfer pack just acts as a switch. There's no real reason why these couldn't have been unlocked for their Virtual Console releases. Really, it just underscores how our wonderfully named SMA4 SMB3E from our eReader video is an absolute unit of a Virtual Console release. Our next 2 games are from then Nintendo second-party developer Rare. First, I want to talk about Mickey's Speedway USA because it's a joke. If you boot up the N64 game with the Game Boy Color cart attached, you will unlock Huey as a racer, aka the red one. And that's it. You get a short little cinematic and then bing, he's in the game. And he's not even that great of a character stat-wise, but if you bought your copy secondhand, check your game. You might be lucky. This is the only way to unlock Huey in the North American and PAL versions, but since the Game Boy Color game never came out in Japan, you can unlock him in that version the first time you get a ghost token. If you're curious about that, now you know. The more interesting game from Rare was Perfect Dark, though it's more interesting for what it didn't have rather than for what it did. And yes, a Game Boy Color version of Perfect Dark was actually released, and it even had a Rumble Pack, which is pretty cool to see outside of a racing or pinball game. Anyway, when you plug it into the transfer pack, you unlock a few cheats: Cloaking Device, Hurricane Fists, Art Tracker, and All Guns and Solo. Now those first 3 aren't a big deal, they're actually quite easy to unlock, but the All Guns cheat is one of Perfect Dark's hardest cheats to get. First off, it normally requires beating the final level on the hardest difficulty, Perfect Agent, in under 5 minutes and 31 seconds, which is no small feat. But to even be able to attempt this challenge, you must beat all other levels on Perfect Agent first. As a kid, I was never able to do this, but with the power of the transfer pack, my childhood can finally be completed. But it's really anticlimactic, like literally. Plug in the transfer pack at any time and the cheats just suddenly appear. I mean, at least Mickey's Speedway had a quick little movie. But that wasn't originally all the transfer pack was planned to do in Perfect Dark. In 1999, Rare announced they were going to allow players to map actual pictures of people's faces onto avatars within the game using the Game Boy camera in a mode called Perfect Head. But by early the next year, Rare suddenly announced it was pulling support for it. Nintendo's Ken Lobb claimed that Rare had trouble getting it to run without crashing the game, but the feature itself was also an unfortunate bit of bad timing. The ability to put not just your face, but anyone's face into a first-person shooter was a hard sell hot off the heels of the Columbine shooting. It's not a feature that's particularly missed since there's still plenty of crazy things in Perfect Dark. However, there was a game that used the Game Boy camera in this way. And that game was Mario Artist for the 64 DD. Man, we gotta get ourselves one of those. With the Game Boy camera, players could actually take pictures of themselves and map it onto an avatar and use it in animations or minigames. We sadly don't have our own DD, so Pughoof Gaming let us use some of his footage. If you'd like to see more, link is in the description below. This feature is kind of like Mii's 10 years before the Wii, and it's a pretty cool feature on its own, but what really caught my eye was that the avatars that you make in Mario Artist could also be transferred into the Japanese-only SimCity 64, which means you could actually put your friends in the game instead of making your friends. Well, I mean, like, you can still make your friends, but like you make more accurate friends, you know what I mean? It's really cool. There were a handful of other Japanese games that had transfer pack capability, but it's not really worth getting into here since we don't have any way to really test them. But our favorite is PD Ultraman Collection 64 because apparently for that game, you can attach any game into the transfer pack and unlock stuff, sort of like Monster Rancher. Like we mentioned at the top, the transfer pack was a pretty late addition to the Nintendo 64, and unsurprisingly, there are a handful of games whose planned transfer pack compatibility didn't make it out the door. A lot of this was pointed out to us by Mesmerize, but Hydro Thunder has transfer pack language buried in its code, and the new Tetris does as well, which, by the way, we really recommend checking out the Cutting Room Floors page on the new Tetris. There's some other good stuff buried in there too. It's worth noting that these games didn't have Game Boy versions, but Rugrats in Paris, the movie, which had both N64 and Game Boy Color versions, has the phrase transfer pack in its code, but is not compatible with the device. Probably the biggest game with planned transfer pack compatibility was WWF No Mercy. The transfer pack would have allowed you to transfer over points that you earned in the Game Boy Color game to the Nintendo 64 to spend at the SmackDown Mall, but the Game Boy Color version was cancelled before the N64 game launched. However, transfer pack language can still be found in No Mercy's code. No Mercy has a passionate mod scene. Maybe someone can find a way to mod WWF Betrayal to work with the game. The transfer pack had a couple of neat uses, but overall was basically best for Pokemon. I went my whole life without owning one though. I bought this thing specifically for this video, but I'm still glad I did, knowing that I'll have complete versions of Mario Tennis, and that maybe one day, this thing will be hacked into becoming a fully functional Game Boy player is exciting. And we want to make sure we give a huge thanks to Mesmerize and Pughoof Gaming for helping out with this video. This video is also brought to you by every one of these beautiful people in our Patreon. For just $1, you can see your name here in the credits of every video and get early access to new Stop Skeletons and fighting videos before they come to YouTube. So if you like what you saw, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, give us a like, give us a comment, and we'll see you again next year.
The Nintendo 64 expansion pack is a piece of junk, almost completely useless and sold on a bed of lies. But I'm still gonna find a few awesome things with this little guy, because this is Punching Weight, a celebration of the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary, and the N64 red top here is all three of those things. So whether you're a hardcore collector or just interested in weird Nintendo peripherals, strap in because we are going to take a deep dive into the Nintendo 64 expansion pack. But first, a shout out to our Patreon supporters. This is a Patreon supported show. Stick around to the end of the video to see all of the people that make this show possible. On with the show. So just what is the expansion pack? It is a peripheral that replaces the stock jumper pack and boosts the power of the Nintendo 64, doubling the RAM with an additional 4 megs of power. It's easy to think this is the product of a bygone era like the Sega CD or the 32X. Yes, they made dual versions of that. But how different is it really from the Xbox One X, PlayStation 4 Pro, or S model iPhones? Well, except this is a hell of a lot cheaper. But really, this is classic Nintendo. They love upgrading their stuff. The NES top loader, the Super Game Boy, the DS, the 3DS, the new 3DS, don't forget about all the Game Boys. I mean, the reason the Wii U failed was because everyone thought it was just a tablet upgrade for the Wii, which, yeah, I guess in a way it was, but let's stay focused. The expansion pack was salvaged from the 64DD, meaning this thing was created for something entirely else. Perhaps this is why so few games used it, and those games that didn't really benefit much from the extra juice. How do you use the expansion pack? Well, on the front of every system is a little hatch with a tiny cartridge. This is the jumper pack, aka Terminator pack. I'm not kidding, that's what it actually says in Japanese on the front there. Pry that thing out with the official Nintendo plastic thingy, or failing that, a screwdriver or table knife, and slide in the old red top and bam! Your Nintendo 64 has now been supercharged. Except it hasn't. The sole purpose of the jumper pack is to allow the system to boot without the expansion pack. I'm not kidding, this thing might as well be empty. Now, with it being designed this way, you'd think, naturally, most of the library supports it. So, before we get into what the red top does, here's what it does not do. It does not improve any non-compatible game. It will not improve the frame rates of GoldenEye or Smash Bros. Or improve your Mario 64 speedrun. However, it functions like a normal jumper pack in those situations, so you don't need to worry about swapping packs, which Nintendo actually encourages you not to do. Though it's probably still worth hanging on to your original jumper pack just in case, more on that later. The Nintendo 64 expansion pack will also not tell you where to suck it, like Professional Wrestler X-Pack. So that covers the non-compatible games. What about the compatible games? In North America, just over 60 games are compatible with the red top. Now, I know that doesn't sound very impressive. Hold on. It's actually even less impressive than that. The most common enhancement was an increase in resolution and texture quality, but at the cost of frame rate. Games would look better but run worse. Bad news for a library of games that already had huge issues with chug. You're usually better off leaving the high-res options alone. This is the case for most of the Turok and Star Wars games, as well as a few sports games. There are a few edge cases like South Park and Duke Nukem 0 Hour having the option to improve either the resolution or frame rate. Other games improve graphics in different ways. The World Is Not Enough, aka 007 Twine, offers a high color mode, and Quake 2 64 offers more colors and a small bump to the frame rate. But some of these games are still N64 exclusives, so the extra graphical options are still an interesting little novelty. They're not really worth getting into, but it's cool. However, a few compatible games were ported to other beefier systems like the Dreamcast, PS2, and PC, which today makes the graphics bump not as meaningful. But I'm sure at the time, it kept the N64 in the conversation as newer systems arrived on the market. In fact, the more I think about the expansion pack, the clearer it becomes that it was just marketing BS. Another example of gaming's tired but still marketable pursuit of graphics over everything. So I'll be honest, you'd be forgiven if you wrote this thing off completely. But digging deeper, the expansion pack still finds itself in the middle of some mysterious and fascinating stuff. So enough farting around, it's time to really get into the mud. The red top had a more interesting and complicated relationship with a handful of games, enough to justify its existence. Still wouldn't say this is one of Nintendo's best products, but man, you know I love this kind of stuff. I had to make a video about it. And before we get too much further, for the record, we're capturing all gameplay footage off the original hardware with the standard composite cables. No emulation for this video. Not that we have any issue with emulation, but for this video, it was important to get the real thing, just for the sake of due diligence and journalism. And of course, we need to start our deep dive into the expansion pack with the 3 games that required it. DK64, Majora's Mask, and Perfect Dark. First up, DK64. Here in the States, it was the only N64 game bundled with the expansion pack. That's how I got mine. Elsewhere in the world, it was also bundled with Perfect Dark and Majora's Mask, but here in the States, it was only bundled with DK64. By itself, the expansion pack retailed for $30, maybe more depending on your region, which made the bundle a pretty good deal. It also came with a jumper pack ejector tool and an instruction book that referred to this hunk of plastic as the jumper pack ejector tool. Yeah, that snazzy red top doesn't actually make it any easier to remove from the system. For fun, here's what DK64 looks like when you try and play it with the jumper pack. Yep, just this screen and nothing else. Could have at least let us listen to the DK rap. DK64 was advertised as a game so massive it needed the expansion pack just to fit it all in.
It's so big we included an expansion pack to get it all in.
And it was a really big game, many would argue too big, but it also housed some fancy lighting and decent frame rate. However, it's worth noting that Rare's follow-up platformers Banjo-Tooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day, released in 2000 and 2001 respectively, were also pretty massive games with impressive graphics that not only didn't require, but didn't even use the expansion pack. So what gives? DK64 was Nintendo's big holiday game for 1999. Nintendo expected it to do Ocarina of Time numbers and was given a massive advertising budget. The advertising was effective. All this time, I genuinely thought it was so big it needed the expansion pack to run.
This is the first game to require the use of the N64 expansion pack.
Yeah, but it just turns out that was all marketing spin. In reality, there was a game-breaking bug that Rare could not fix. The real reason DK64 required the expansion pack was that it was an easier fix for this bug that randomly crashed the game. It was a costly solution, but Nintendo needed their holiday hit, delaying the game was out of the question. And also, the expansion pack didn't even fix the bug, only severely mitigated it. If left on for upwards to 10 hours, the game will still crash. This really isn't a problem for N64 owners, however, for emulation and virtual console players using save states instead of saving and exiting the game like you normally would, this is still a problem. The bug is apparently due to memory leakage and may have been the result of an unseasoned development team within Rare. It's true that Rare as a company made some incredible games for the system, but for most of the DK64 development team, this was their first N64 game. According to some serious tea spilled by the members of the Conker's Bad Fur Day team, their game didn't need the expansion pack because they did a much better job optimizing the graphics than the DK64 team.
Donkey Kong 64, they did use it, didn't they?
Indeed they did.
Which means that we
had to use it.
Which means that we did a much better job of optimizing the game.
There's also a good story behind why that happened.
Whew, damn, that is some serious shade. Anyway, this leaves us in two places. Either the expansion pack just fixes the bug, or it does more than fix the bug. If the problem solely was the bug, then technically DK64 can run with the standard jumper pack. Theoretically, if some genius could hack the system with a Game Shark or something like that, or get around the check for the expansion pack at startup, the game would run just fine. I mean, it would probably still crash all the time, but if it's true that it just fixed the bug, it shouldn't need the extra RAM to run, and the expansion pack is even more useless than I thought. But here's what I can't figure out. DK64 was released November 1999, but the announcement that it would require the expansion pack came in May, 6 months earlier. 6 months! And there's no telling when that decision was made internally at Nintendo. Now, I'm no programmer, but that's not exactly the 11th hour. If the expansion pack just fixes the bug, that means with at least 6 months of development left, nobody said, well, since we have to use the expansion pack, might as well beef up the graphics and frame rate while we're at it. Now, it's totally possible that no one said that, but when the truth came out about the bug, the world seemed to declare, okay, case closed. But there are still mysteries yet to be solved with DK64. And one last thing. People are too harsh on this game. It definitely ain't no masterpiece, and probably the weakest of Rare's N64 platformers, but this deserves a remaster and a second chance. Moving on, another game that requires the expansion pack, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Majora's relationship with the Red Top isn't as juicy as DK64's, but it's still really interesting, and again, for funsies, here's what it looks like when you boot it up with the jumper pack. It's weird how some of the text is blurry. It's just text, what's the deal? The Legend of Zelda and the expansion pack go way back. Both Zelda 64s were at some point planned for the ill-fated disc add-on the 64DD, which, like I stated earlier, is what the expansion pack was originally made for. However, like a lot of 64DD games, Ocarina shipped without expansion pack support. Though there are beta versions of Ocarina that require the expansion pack, though they may have been tech demos for the slightly improved GameCube version, as evidenced by the 2003 copyright on the title screen. For a hot minute, there was a third Zelda project separate from Majora's Mask, an expansion for Ocarina called Uda Zelda for the 64DD. Expansions are what they used to call DLC, children. From the ashes of Uda Zelda rose the Master Quest mode, which found its way to a port on the GameCube and the 3DS remake. Now, what does any of this have to do with the follow-up Majora's Mask? Majora runs on the Ocarina engine and reuses a ton of assets, so I've never understood why exactly this game requires the expansion pack. And listen, what I mean by that is it's clear what the expansion pack does to Majora's Mask. Its graphical improvements over Ocarina are numerous and well documented. However, why was the expansion pack not optional? The closest explanation I can find is that Majora had a very short development time. The story goes that because Ocarina took 4 years to make, Shigeru Miyamoto wanted a fast turnaround for the next Zelda game. Eiji Aonuma was given the baton and made Majora's Mask in just 1 year. Even reusing the Ocarina engine and its assets, it's possible the team didn't have the time to make Majora optimized for the jumper pack. But I think it's deeper than even that. It needed the extra RAM for its landmark time mechanic. The world of Majora's Mask is filled with dozens of NPCs, and keeping track of their location and your progress with their side missions at all times was a massive memory hog. I imagine it's similar to how the PS3 and 360 versions of Shadow of Mordor have a greatly reduced Nemesis system because those previous generation systems just don't have the specs. I think it's possible that Majora is the inverse of DK64. Aonuma knew that the time mechanic wouldn't be possible without the extra RAM, so they improved the visuals while they were at it. This is one of the few times the expansion pack was used to push the limits of gameplay, not just graphics. Or maybe I'm just stretching here, but wouldn't it be just like Nintendo to be the only ones who knew how to properly use their hardware? At any rate, despite requiring the red top, Majora's Mask still sold well, though not quite as well as Ocarina. And even though it was a divisive game for fans at the time, from here Aonuma would become the shepherd of the Legend of Zelda series for Nintendo. Even though it's probably the smartest and best use of the expansion pack, Majora is still a little rough around the edges. The best way to play this game today is on the 3DS remake. Still, die-hard Majora fans need to recognize that without this little buddy here, we would have never had this game. Next, it's Perfect Dark. Now, when I said that there are 3 games that require the expansion pack, that's not exactly true. Huge portions of this game are inaccessible without the extra memory, but you still can play Perfect Dark on a jumper pack. That's even advertised on the box. 65% of this game requires the expansion pack. This is not the only game to do this, we'll get to that in a second, but it's without a doubt the most well-known example. Now, it might look like there's next to nothing you can do without the expansion pack, but that's not true. Booting up with the jumper pack grants you access to the small but perfect menu. Yeah, that's that classic Rare humor for you, which lets you play one of the most robust multiplayer modes in the history of video games. You're only allowed 2 human players, but you can still fill matches with 8 computer bots. There are so many guns, levels, modes of play. For my money, this is the real star of Perfect Dark. So what if you can't do 4-player split screen? You can still get dumb as hell with 8 bots and nothing but N-bombs, baby. Yeah, just look at this unplayable mess. It's so beautiful. So the expansion pack is optional, but you can still have a hell of a time without one. With the expansion pack though, you're allowed 4-player in the combat simulator, as well as access to all things related to the single-player campaign, including the cooperative and still almost one-of-a-kind counter-operative mode. And of course, you also have the option to change the screen size, resolution, and aspect ratio, but no setting keeps this game from some serious chug action. Like we pointed out in previous episodes, once you play the HD version on XBLA or in Rare Replay, there's just no going back. It's such an enormous improvement, but few games push the limits of not just the N64, but any console, like Perfect Dark, and watching this game struggle to run on an actual N64 is still a thing of wonder. But hold on, here's something that I think holds the HD versions back. If you're playing on Xbox, you cannot play multiplayer with guests. All players have to have an Xbox Live account to play any form of multiplayer. No combat simulator, no co-op, no counter-op. It's stupid. What if me and my friends are drunk and just want to play now? What if most of us bought PS4s and don't remember our Xbox emails and passwords? What's wrong with guests? You know what you need to play multiplayer on an N64? Extra controllers and maybe the expansion pack. That's it. God, the future can be lame sometimes. And Perfect Dark isn't the only game that hides huge portions of its game behind the expansion pack. StarCraft 64 requires it to play the Brood War campaign, which is fitting as that was the PC Games expansion, and the multiplayer. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal. I mean, if you want to play StarCraft and Brood War, it's very available on PC. But the big deal here is the split-screen multiplayer. Now, for some of you, the idea of split-screen StarCraft sounds absurd, but like I pointed out in earlier episodes, it's pretty damn unique. StarCraft, when you and your opponent can see each other's screens, drastically changes the multiplayer dynamic, and you can only get that with the N64 expansion pack. Furthermore, it is damn impressive how well this game actually plays on an N64 controller. I really can't say enough how mind-bogglingly good this game is. And this is now the 3rd time we've mentioned StarCraft 64 in a video! We did it! Oh, I never thought we'd get here, people! Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so thankful. I just want to thank my parents. Next up, another N64 technical marvel, Resident Evil 2. As expected, the expansion pack adds more texture detail, but nothing that'll make you toss out your PlayStation 1 version. We've read claims of higher resolution cutscenes, but Look, it's still a miracle the cutscenes were all somehow crammed into this cartridge, but I couldn't spot any differences, so nothing too exciting, I know, but I only bring this up because we discovered something odd about Resident Evil 2 64. When we mentioned this game on our Resident Evil 2 episode of Punching Weight, we came across a production problem. With the expansion pack, the game shifts resolutions constantly, sometimes when moving to a new camera angle, or sometimes when opening and closing the menu, and every time, our capture card cut the video feed for a few seconds to readjust, making it impossible to play, especially in the very beginning. We needed a jumper pack to get footage, but I didn't think to take the jumper pack out of storage because why would I ever need my jumper pack ever again? It had actually been sitting in the same place for the last 20 years, inside my DK64 box. We had to buy another jumper pack because look, every time the footage grays out or skips ahead a few seconds, the video is cutting out. Every time you see that, I'm flying completely blind for a few seconds. It was so frustrating, but there must be some impressive behind-the-curtain tech running this game because no other N64 game we tested had this many graphical shifts, and we think that's actually pretty awesome. Also, I found out that some jumper packs come with stickers and some don't. So thank you for almost derailing an entire episode Resident Evil 2 64, but you're a fascinatingly weird game, and we love you. Oh, and on the topic of games where the expansion pack gave me some trouble, here's a fun little aside: Space Station Silicon Valley. This cult favorite platformer from the people that would one day give us GTA 3 is not expansion pack compatible, but will still sometimes crash with the expansion pack. Again, usually games that don't support the expansion pack play no differently with the expansion pack, but Space Station Silicon Valley is the only game with this problem as far as we could tell, which is good news because all this time I thought something was wrong with my cart. Okay, we're getting down to the end here. Next, we're gonna look at 3 Midway games where the red top does more than just improve the graphics: Hydro Thunder, Gauntlet Legends, and San Francisco Rush 2049. The expansion pack is required to play Gauntlet Legends with more than 2 players and Hydro Thunder with more than 3 players. I think this is kind of interesting because both of these games were also released on the Dreamcast, a system that also had 4 controller ports. However, Hydro Thunder on the Dreamcast is only 2 players. Now, years later, Hydro Thunder would appear on Midway Arcade Treasures 3 for the PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox, but the version in this bundle is apparently just a port of the Dreamcast version, which means the N64 expansion pack version is the only one with a 4-player mode. I never felt compelled to own the N64 port of Hydro Thunder. You're looking at the Dreamcast version here, by the way. But after learning this little factoid, I think I might have to track this version down. As for Gauntlet Legends, while the box says it's designed for the expansion pack, it doesn't explicitly say it's required for 3 or 4 players, which must have ruined at least a few game nights back in the day. And lastly, San Francisco Rush 2049. An entire track and racing circuit is locked without the expansion pack, plus changeable rims and music in arcade races. In this instance, you're probably better off just getting the Dreamcast version or playing it on the Midway Arcade Treasures 3 compilation I just mentioned. And there's a bunch of other trivia, like the PAL-exclusive F1 World Grand Prix 2, a game I've never played myself, apparently requires the expansion pack to view full race replays. I read on Wikipedia that Shadowgate 64 has unlisted expansion pack support, but I tested that for myself, and there are no graphical options in the game, and I didn't notice any difference. That's Wikipedia for you. NBA Jam 2000 mentions jaw-dropping ultra-high-res graphics on the back of the box, but doesn't indicate that without an expansion pack, your jaw will remain undropped. Revolt unlocks a medium resolution mode with the expansion pack, which doubles the resolution. However, with a cheat code, you can unlock an even higher quality, but I don't have a copy myself, so I couldn't say if that makes it look or run better than the Dreamcast version. And that just about covers it, so I want to say thank you so much.
Now wait just a damn minute there, Derek.
Wait a minute, that voice sounds familiar.
You weren't thinking of wrapping this thing up without mentioning a little thing called the Turok games?
Oh, hello there, Mr. McMuscles. And, well, yeah, all the Turok games do is increase the graphics, but at the cost of the frame rate. and those games already ran kind of shitty.
Derek, sweet child. You're not thinking punching weight enough. You're forgetting that the Turok games have cheats. Cheats that mess with the graphics. And there's some fun to be had. And besides, you're always fucking ragging on Turok games, and everyone dislikes that. Allow me to grab the wheel from you for just a minute.
All right, fine, Matt. Hit him with that Turok dinosaur hunter knowledge.
Okay, look, there are 4 Turok games released on the N64, and they were the best. And all but the first one used the expansion pack. Not that they needed it. And for the record, Mr. Alexander didn't mention this at the top, but Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, released late October 1998, was the first game to support the expansion pack, edging out, the pretenders like Quarterback Club 99, Top Gear Overdrive, FIFA, all that shit, even Star Wars Rogue Squadron by a few weeks, at least in North America. Okay, fine, I'll give you that. Turok 2, Turok 3, and the spin-off Rage Wars offered the expected high-res mode, which, makes the graphics sharper, but the games run slightly slower. It doesn't have cheats that improve graphics, like Revolt. You can still have some fun comparing stuff like the pen and ink mode cheat, aka polygon mode, and the grad mode cheat, aka texture map mode, switching between high and low res with the expansion pack and comparing the differences. Ink and paper mode especially is a cool peek behind the curtain, a clearer sense of just how much the expansion pack is improving the visuals. It's mind-blowing. I really wish the PS4 or modern PCs could keep up with this tech.
Oh wow, that is really cool, but it is about time to wrap up, and now that you're here, I think I know just how to do it with the most hilarious expansion pack compatible game.
Daikatana?
Ooh, close, but no. Xena Warrior Princess.
You actually own Xena Warrior Princess.
I mean, I don't, but I know someone who does.
I don't know what you're talking about, Derek.
Matt, we are doing important work here, please. The world needs to know. Does the expansion pack make Xena Warrior Princess the greatest game ever made?
Well, you ended the Nintendo 64 mouse video with Superman 64. We need another showstopper for this video. Another Titus joint, Xena Warrior Princess.
Ooh, the Talisman of Fate. So fancy. All right, Matt, what are we looking at here?
Xena is a fighting game, a 3D fighting game.
Oh wow, there aren't too many of those on the N64. That's pretty cool.
Well, it's kind of a fighting. It's barely kind of a game. Let's just play it.
Oh hell yeah, main girl, Xena Warrior Queen. And ladies and gentlemen, I think a storm is brewing. It's a fight. Wow, and right out of the gate, Xena is playing the mind games. Xena got her completely confused with this technique here.
Yeah, no, Derek, I concur. This is a really sound strategy. You can't beat this. Oh wow, we haven't seen this technique done since...
And now she's backing away to let the clock run out.
This is a sound strategy here.
Absolutely, Matt. Bold strategy. Very bold.
Bold
Very
strategy
bold.
here.
Matt, would you say this is a bold strategy here?
Ooh, that's a bold strategy here.
And again with the mind games. Oh my gosh, just jumping. In all my years of broadcasting, I've never seen such command over the ring.
Now this is a really great tactic by her. She's going to do...
Yeah?
Nothing. That's good. That's good too.
Matt, does this game still suck?
Yep.
Right on. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out Matt's channel. He is currently working through an amazing 8-part retrospective on the Prince of Persia games. It's over on Matt's Flophouse. You are watching Stop Skeletons Fighting. We are a Patreon-supported show. Huge shout out to all of the wonderful people that you see on the screen right here. They made this video possible. You know who else made this video possible? Our friend Alex from S House Studios. Thank you for helping out with the edits. Again, to support the show at patreon.com, $1 goes a long way, but $2 gets you access to our activity feed and our private Discord. Check that stuff out. Thank you so much for the support. Thanks so much for watching. Stay powerful. Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons and Fighting. And we're gonna give a shout out to Shelby. This is not an ad, this is actually just Shelby watches the show, and we want to say thank you so much for watching, and also a huge thanks to Shelby's family for helping out the channel and helping out the show. So thank you so much. And with that said, hey, let's talk about
rumbling controllers. Vibrating controllers are something we take for granted, but like all standards, there were the early days, and Nintendo in particular did some ridiculous stuff. Welcome to Punching Weight, where we celebrate the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary. And because progress is never a straight line, I'm gonna take you through Nintendo's history with rumble technology, that they're rocky, rough and tumble, shaky, rocky history with rumble. Do we have all that out of our system? Rumble made its debut on consoles with the N64 Rumble Pack. Nintendo is a company that's at its best when it's innovating, and the Rumble Pack is definitely among their greatest innovations. It's an extra layer of immersion that's so good that it became weird for a controller to not have some kind of rumble support. You ever wonder why controllers got so much bigger over the generations? Was it because our hands just got bigger? Was it for more buttons? Or was it to make room for that rumble? I mean, look at these guys! Look at these cuties. They're so small. Look at them. They're all so small. Except the Genesis controller. Damn, that's a thick boy right there. Damn, Genesis controller. Damn. Rumble, or haptic feedback, existed in video games before 1997, but it first came to the living room packaged with Star Fox 64. That's right, I'm talking about the debut, baby. The N64 Rumble Pack. And that's pack, not POC. See how it feels to feel what you see, says the back of the box. It's a new jolt to your gameplay experience. It didn't hurt that Star Fox 64 was an amazing game, but it also wasn't long before we started seeing Rumble Pack support for almost every N64 game, from GoldenEye to Yoshi's Story to Wheel of Fortune? It's like I'm really there. I'm really spinning that wheel. I love video games. Star Fox actually wasn't that big of a hit in Japan, but Japanese exclusive re-releases of Mario 64 and Wave Race 64, aka the Shindo versions, helped popularize the Rumble Pack over there. It was still humble beginnings for rumbly controllers. And what I mean by that is the Rumble Pack had lots of room for improvement. It compromised the memory card slot. It required batteries. It was a bulky, heavy device to slap onto an already weirdly shaped controller. Nintendo may have been pioneers with the Rumble Pack, but they quickly found competition. Sega answered back with the Dreamcast Jump Pack, but Sony clapped back hard with the DualShock. Credit Star Fox 64 for being the first, but PlayStation Rumble was in both sides of the controller, had no batteries necessary, and contained probably the most iconic Rumble moment of all time.
Now I will move your controller.
The PlayStation DualShock set the vibration standard. However, Sony's haste to respond to Nintendo got them in some hot water for patent infringement from a company called Immersion. Microsoft was actually slapped with a similar suit. However, they settled with Immersion out of court. Sony, on the other hand, fought the lawsuit only to eventually lose the lawsuit in 2007. They then cut a deal with Immersion, and suddenly Rumble technology no longer affected the PlayStation 3's 6-axis technology. Funny how that happens. Who knew that was what it was?
Do you think anyone actually remembers that the original PS3 controllers Rumble?
I forgot that, yeah. Well, there's the DualShock 3, but the PlayStation 3 didn't ship with a DualShock 3. It shipped with 6-axis. It's
what a train wreck.
Video games are dumb.
They're really dumb.
But not Nintendo. The Rumble Pack technology was based off of their own patent, and so they were free to evolve their Rumble technology with, again, not the greatest results. Enter the Game Boy Color Rumble cartridges. Who needs accessories when you can just build the technology right into the cartridge? But remember, the Game Boy Color is a portable system. It's kind of weird to manufacture cartridges that make your system bulkier, but that never stopped Nintendo in the past or in the future. Didn't stop anyone who made portable games, so what are you gonna do? Plus, it once again required batteries, this time a single AAA. You know, I didn't actually look at the patents, but I wonder if all the batteries are how they were able to dodge the patent lawsuits. Anyway, there were 14 Rumble Pack Game Boy Color games released in North America. A majority were racing games, but there was sports, action, and of course, pinball. The flagship game being Pokemon Pinball. But yo, shoutouts to Little Mermaid 2 Pinball Frenzy. Actually, most of these are Game Boy Color only games, but feature a little notch cut out of the top, meaning that they do physically fit in a standard brick Game Boy. Still, physical compatibility aside, I think Pokemon Pinball is the only Game Boy Color Rumble game that's backwards compatible with non-color Game Boys. These Rumble games are pretty neat, and they're great for collectors, but they were far from perfect. Because the label is exposed, it's hard to find copies of these games with the labels that aren't all scuffed up. The battery is held in place by a little piece of plastic that isn't hinged inside, so it was gobbled up by school bus floors and backpacks immediately. I mean, they're basically the G.I. Joe plastic missiles of video games.
Or like the Barbie shoes.
Barbie shoes.
Yeah, Barbie shoes. The shoes just slip off the foot immediately.
G.I. Joe missiles and Barbie shoes. Thank you, Bruce and Grace, for that perspective. They're like Barbie shoes. But that was all basically in the late 90s. By the new millennium, Rumble was the standard for console controllers. Xbox, PS2, and GameCube controllers were all made ready to rumble. In just half a generation too, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. And Nintendo mostly took a break with Rumble games on the GBA, except for a few notable exceptions. WarioWare Twisted is not only a ridiculous looking cartridge, it is an amazing game with both motion controls and Rumble. Again, not the most portable setup, but it wasn't the only one. There was also Drill Dozer, made by Game Freak. This is a super charming game that features vibration, but in a much less ridiculous cartridge. It actually goes deeper than that. Most Rumble action on the GBA was through the GameCube's GBA player. Say, for example, your copy of Drill Dozer plays fine, but the Rumble has stopped working. Plug it into the GameCube, and the drilling is once again a killin', but through a GameCube controller. And you can tell this by the GameCube player logo that you see at the start. That's how you know it has extra compatibility with the GBA player. And there are a few other games with this logo at startup, like Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3E, Pokemon Pinball Ruby Sapphire, and Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, rest in peace, Alpha Dreams. Secret Rumble on the GameCube. I had no idea this whole time. That's what I get for using my fancy Super Nintendo throwback controller. It's a cool controller though still. Yet, Nintendo still did not give up on their rumbling ambitions, and the next generation was even wilder. After the GBA came the DS, and Nintendo made a Rumble Pack special for the system's GBA slot. And we covered all this in our Secrets of the DS GBA slot videos, but it was first bundled with Metroid Prime Pinball in North America, and a ton of games work with it. However, if you don't have a Nintendo DS Rumble Pack, but you do have a copy of WarioWare Twisted just lying around, guess what? You have a fully functioning DS Rumble Pack. I mean, plug that sucker into your GBA slot and get that force feedback with partners in time. Interestingly though, Drill Dozer doesn't seem to work in place of the Rumble Pack, and WarioWare Twisted doesn't have as strong of a rumble as the official pack, but maybe they're just my copies of the game. Of course, the original DS and DS Lite slot solution represented a last hurrah for portable gaming vibration, as the Nintendo DSi and every 3DS, 2DS model would go on to feature no rumble whatsoever. I guess they went all in on the visual tech, and the Wii had plenty of immersion and feedback if you wanted it. Nintendo was still innovating, 3D, motion controls, that cute little speaker on the Wiimote. Nintendo kept innovating, but rumble feedback was no longer at the cool kids table. But you know what that means? That cool 3DS remake of Mario & Luigi, the only way to play that with rumble is with a GameCube and the original GBA cart. And WarioWare Gold's got a lot of levels from Twisted, but no rumble at all. And also the cartridge isn't crazy. They should have made WarioWare Gold with like an extra thing up this over the side. Should have had a little, lovely lady lump on that gold. Should have, missed opportunity. But from here, it did seem like Rumble wasn't ever going to evolve in any significant way, and the Wii U, PS4, and Xbox One didn't do anything to write home about Rumble-wise. But then came, they snap like that, right? Is that how they do it? Snap, snapping, snapping. The Nintendo Switch came and thrust upon the world Rumble HD, the H'est of Ds. Our collective Ds had never been rumbled so H before. So yeah, we all remember that Ice Cube demo thing, right? Basically, Nintendo finally decided to partner with Immersion, who you might remember as that company with a stranglehold on Rumble patents and who sued the crap out of Sony in the 2000s. HD Rumble is not a huge selling point for Nintendo's latest system, but it's something that's found, I think, great use on Switch games. 1-2 Switch features minigames that rely entirely on Rumble and not even looking at the TV. Mario Odyssey, I think, does a great job with a bevy of varied feedback from jumping, running, sliding to a stop. Though some games go a little overboard, like Classic Doom, rumbling when you shoot, get shot, pick up an item, reload your shotgun. I appreciate the extra work, guys, but it's a little too much. Lumines Remastered allows you to hook up additional Joy-Cons that pulse to the music. Take that, Res Trance Vibrator. Golf Story used it really well, I thought. It also enhanced lockpicking in Skyrim. And indie game Tumbleseed claimed they wanted their game to be the flagship demonstration of HD Rumble. Yes, someone had to do it. I mean, 1-2 Switch didn't do it. Somebody had to.
I mean, it did it, but it just didn't sell well.
Yeah, no, and actually, it turns out this game didn't sell that well either. So, yeah. But is HD Rumble really Nintendo innovating here? I mean, this nuanced level of Rumble is now standard in most smartphones and watches. But wouldn't you know it, Immersion even sued Apple for the haptic feedback in iPhone 6. So Nintendo at least deserves credit for putting it in console controllers. And who knows, maybe Sony and Microsoft will put some form of HD Rumble in their new controllers. If that happens, I think you can once again give credit to Nintendo for pushing the industry forward, even if it is just a little jolt to your hands. Thank you so much for watching. This video is also brought to you in part by our lovely Patreon supporters who have now been supporting this show for almost 5 years. Also, one of our supporters let us borrow their copy of Pokemon Pinball, WarioWare Twisted, and Drill Dozer. We've used them in videos before. We might use them again, but we're just about ready to send those back to you, man. Thank you so much for letting us borrow them. Let's see, man. We're back to streaming. It's 2020. We're back full-time working again streaming. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on your YouTube. Hit a like if you like it. Go ahead and hit the bell if you're feeling well, if you're feeling swell. Rumble the bell and wrestle the thumb. There we go. Yeah, keep watching. 2020 is just getting started, man. We are just getting started. It's gonna be a year. It's always a year, but definitely a year with Uncle Derek, Producer Grace. Stick around. Stay tuned. See you again real soon. Nobody fails better than Nintendo. If something doesn't work, they go back to the drawing board and keep at it. And the Game Boy systems were their playground. A decades-long iron grip on the portable gaming market meant they got to go wild with experimentation. And today, I'm gonna dip my toe into the world of crazy Game Boy motion-controlled cartridges. Nintendo was planting the seeds of ideas that would later be used for the Wii as early as the Game Boy Color, with cartridges with built-in motion sensors. But like, these carts must have been expensive to manufacture, and more often than not, they were just like teetering on the brink of self-justification. Good ideas don't always make good games, and in this case, the devil is in the details. Welcome to Punching Weight, where we celebrate the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary, and in this episode, it's motion. For the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, it's motion controls. It's moving the system, moving on. Our first game is one of the more well-known we'll be talking about, and also just plain odd. Tilt and Tumble is a top-down platformer where you control Kirby by tilting the system and rolling our little pink buddy across 8 varied and challenging worlds. It'll have you jump in clouds, dodge in bumpers, navigate in hills. There's a lot going on in this game. And the tilt controls alone set it apart from almost every game released on the Game Boy Color, but it's also a bit of a weird game in the context of its release. It came out in North America in 2001, just a couple months before the Game Boy Advance, so it's a little late to the party. As you can see, it has a super cute pink cartridge that's a little bulkier than a standard Game Boy Color case to make room for the gyro accelerometer, but also there's this weird notch in the corner. Now, is this the only Game Boy Color only cart that can physically fit into an OG brick Game Boy? Usually, clear Game Boy Color only cases have full round tops and can't physically fit into an original Game Boy. But not Kirby here. Kirby's special. Why are you so special, Kirby? On paper, this concept is awesome. Tilting the system to control Kirby is super charming and the perfect spin-off for the Pink Puff, but in actual execution, it comes up pretty short. It's a demanding game that's a victim of the Game Boy Color's lack of a backlight, so it's already difficult to see, but constantly tilting the system makes it super easy to lose track of Kirby. And when you flick the system up to make Kirby jump, dude, forget about it. A worm light helps a bit here, but really, Kirby Tilt and Tumble is like reason 1001 why I need to get myself a modded, backlit, wide model GBA. But in the meantime, I tried playing it on the SP. This game was made well before the SP, so while it gives you a clearer picture with the backlight, because the cart slots from the bottom, your movements are flipped, meaning you have to play the game backwards, and there's no way to recalibrate the tilt function. The pros, and I'm nothing if not professional, use a GameCube GBA player and physically hold the system and do A pushes with a dance pad. Well, I don't have a dance pad, but I do have Donkey Kongas, damn it. It's both a genuinely good way to play this game and one of the dumbest ways to play any game. My kind of thing. Ultimately though, Kirby Tilt and Tumble is a rough example of what Nintendo would later be able to do with motion. And how fitting is that? Because it turns out the best way to play this game is on a Wiimote. That's right. While manhandling a GameCube is fun for a goof, hands down the best way to play this game is with a Wiimote via emulation. You can see what you're doing, movement is much better, and, at least on my ROM, Wiimote compatibility was already patched in. It was an early use of motion control technology though, and while it's not my favorite, I'm glad that the best way to play it is relatively accessible. Okay, the best way that I can test. I don't have an Android and I'm just too much of a casual to get emulation working on my smartphone, but hackers, I've heard good things. Unfortunately, Tilt and Tumble never made it outside of Japan and North America, and is one of the few classic Kirby games that has never been re-released. There was a GameCube sequel for it showcased at Nintendo Space World 2001 that would have used the link cable. Look at that! How crazy is that? Okay, let me break this footage down for you. That is Shigeru Miyamoto controlling the game with the accelerometer in a pink Tilt and Tumble cartridge, meaning that this game would have needed a GameCube, a link cable, an original Game Boy Advance, and a Game Boy Color game just to play it? Okay, they probably would have released a special GBA cartridge, but still, this was apparently a step too far for even Nintendo. Tilt and Tumble 2 was demoted from being a Kirby game the following year, renamed Roll-O-Rama, before being cancelled altogether. It's weird that this GameCube sequel didn't just go full Super Monkey Ball, or maybe because of Monkey Ball, Nintendo got cold feet? Still, it blows my mind that Tilt and Tumble has never been re-released despite the fact Nintendo has since released multiple motion-controlled systems. But Kirby actually wasn't the only Tilt cartridge to come out for the Game Boy Color. There's also Enix's Japan-only Command Master, which is obscure enough that it doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. Released a few months after Tilt and Tumble in Japan, the game itself is a robot-style take on the Pokemon franchise, a genre I like to call the Robochew. Seriously, Pokemon came out and more than just a few people all simultaneously thought, robots! But Command Master's Tilt is way more simplistic than Tilt and Tumbles. In this game, it's used as part of a rhythm game in battle sequences to transform your robot, or you into a robot? Honestly, the same could have been accomplished by just using the D-pad, but I guess they were leaning on the novelty of the tilt sensor to help it stand out from the glut of other Pokemon-style games already available. I wish I could tell you more about this game, but I wasn't able to get past the tutorial section, which I kept failing despite having perfect rhythm. There isn't a lot of information about this game online. The only thing we could find were people also getting stuck at this part.
I can't transform!
Near as we can tell, there's no fan translation, and my Japanese definitely ain't what it used to be, so if anyone out there wants to champion Command Master for the Game Boy Color, I'd at least appreciate it. It's the only other Game Boy Color game with tilt controls, and as far as I know, the only motion-controlled Game Boy game not developed or published by Nintendo. More information about this game needs to be available. Maybe we're all sleeping on an underrated classic.
Probably not.
Well, not with that attitude. The next Game Boy game to have motion controls was this time on the Game Boy Advance. Koro Koro Puzzle Happy Panichu is a first-party Nintendo puzzler that, as you might be able to guess from the title that's almost a parody of itself, was only released in Japan. It's a pretty simple match 3 puzzle game where you slide your little Panichu by tilting the system. Connecting 3 or more bombs allows you to detonate and clear more Panichu, though I'm not sure that makes them as happy. We don't actually have this cartridge, but it works great with Wiimote emulation. It's a neat, but maybe too simple a use of motion controls. On the one hand, there's no nuance, just one tilt sends everyone sliding, but it's nothing you couldn't do on a D-pad. It did make the cartridge bigger than your typical GBA cart, though. It's a fun novelty and great proof of concept for Nintendo, but I don't think the rest of the world was really missing out on too much here. There wouldn't be any motion games for a few more years. Well, there almost was one, but we'll talk about that later. Yoshi's Topsy Turvy came out in Japan in 2004 and in North America in 2005. And here's a motion-controlled Game Boy game that the EU finally got, known there as Yoshi's Universal Gravitation. Developed by Artoon, who would go on to make Yoshi's Island DS and Vampire Rain, Topsy Turvy is classic-looking Yoshi's Island, this time a charming pop-up book aesthetic. So, like Kirby Tilt and Tumble, it's exactly the type of spin-off you'd expect. However, it's a much simpler approach to motion controls, requiring you to only rotate the system left or right 90 degrees. With this tilt functionality, you can roll out carpet or cardboard, run up walls, slide up and down ice half-pipes, float as a balloon, aim cannons, etc. It even has the option to flip the sensor orientation so it's fully compatible with the SP, finally! Unfortunately, it just doesn't work all that well. The problem comes from not being able to center yourself in mid-air, which affects how you fall. Like, a simple jump can be hard to land if you're tilting too much in the other direction. It's a platforming game where the platforming just doesn't feel right, and levels feel short and are segmented off into small chunks instead of feeling like fully formed, memorable levels. And also, you don't throw eggs. Yoshi doesn't have eggs in this game. Seems like that's what you'd use the damn tilt for in the first place. right? Forget Topsy-Turvy, this should have been called Yoshi's Sharpshooter, or Yoshi Pool Hustler, like his billiard spin-off, I don't know. Really, I'm a little harsh on Topsy-Turvy, mainly because there was another game released around the same time that took the same tilt technology to incredible heights. The penultimate juggernaut of all these carts, 2005's WarioWare Twisted. What an absolute unit. Just look at this beefy boy right here. Not only does the tilt tech feel much better here, it's also packed with rumble feedback, all without the need for an external battery. Topsy-Turvy is a nice proof of concept, but Twisted is the real deal. Even beyond that, this is a damn good WarioWare game in its own right, and it's actually the second biggest collection of minigames in the series. It's full stop the best implementation of motion from this era, and what can you say about the WarioWare games? There's a lot of them, they're basically all good, and this is another one.
You turn it, it turns you. It's Twisted.
A question. Can you play this game with a GameCube and a pair of Donkey Kongas? Yes. Should you? No. Would it theoretically improve your form if you were, say, a drummer in a metal band? Yeah, probably. Do I know anything about that? No, and that's why I almost threw my back out playing this game. Remember, properly stretch before and after attempting to manhandle WarioWare Twisted on your GameCube. Or maybe just don't attempt while being old. A recurring theme we have noticed is a lack of Virtual Console re-release love, plus getting these games working on emulation may require some extra patching. Such is the case for WarioWare Twisted. Both this and Yoshi got DS sequels around the exact same time, and those have both gotten more re-release love. Though Twisted did kinda get remade in 2018's WarioWare Gold for the 3DS, but I don't know if a lot of people would say that's a solid substitute. Apparently, it's fantastic on a smartphone. Still, as either a motion-controlled oddity, a super weird cart, or just another fine WarioWare game, Twisted is one hell of a title. When you look at the implementation of motion controls, it's been pretty mixed, which is kind of surprising, and Nintendo's usually on their stuff. It makes you wonder, what if the kings of second-party Nintendo development, Rare, got a crack at it? Well, it turns out they actually almost did. 2005's Banjo Pilot was actually not always intended to star Banjo. Before Nintendo and Rare's messy breakup and Rare's subsequent shacking up with Microsoft, this game was actually intended to be a sequel to the N64's Diddy Kong Racing. Not only that, it was planned to have motion controls and was even showcased at Space World 2001. Thanks to some heroes, we have access to a couple of prototypes, one of them being from 2001 that includes motion controls, or at least it has the option for motion controls. When I started them on our Wii, I wasn't able to control the plane, not even with the D-pad, so it's possible this just needs a patch, like WarioWare Twisted. But at the same time, this is a prototype. It's hard to say if the motion controls worked that well or at all. They were actually taken out of the game in later builds because Nintendo wasn't satisfied. They were apparently removed altogether before Microsoft bought Rare. So, as far as I know, no one has ever played Diddy Kong Pilot with the motion controls at home. And I want that to happen so bad. There's actually one more motion-controlled game, Tony Hawk Motion for the DS, but we're planning on holding on to that one for another video, so just keep that in your back pocket for now. We actually got to make this video thanks to one of our Patreon supporters lending us these games, and in fact, they lent us a few more games, and we're also planning on covering them in the future, so don't worry y'all, we ain't finished yet.
There's more Game Boy stuff.
We ain't never stopping, because we got the fantastic support of our generous Patreon supporters. You can join their ranks, be on the Discord, listen to the exclusive podcast, click the link, please give us what you can. We can't thank them all enough, and we got more videos coming. Grace, we gotta stop now because we gotta get back to work. More videos coming. Turn it off. Grace, we got videos coming.
Subscribe!
Oh yeah, and subscribe, ring the bell. I don't know. Hey, I'm Derek. It's me, Derek. And I'm in a Nintendo 64 game. Yep, this is me, walking on the street, living it up in this lush 64-bit metropolis. And getting there was one of the dumbest and most ridiculous journeys I have ever gone on. And for me, that is saying something. This is me inside SimCity 64. This is not a very well-known feature, and that's because the amount of dumb, expensive tech that you would need in order to do this is just peak 5th generation Nintendo. With so many hurdles, why even put this in the game? Who is this for? Who would even try this? Me, that's who. Along with the help of our Patreon supporters who voted on this video, and N64 Street Gifts for letting me borrow their 64DD gear. Welcome back to Punching Weight. And this might be the weirdest, most ambitious, and the most unnecessary thing I have ever done for a video. But with all this junk, I'm gonna show you how to get into the game. Sorry about that one. But first, this part of the video is sponsored by Private Internet Access, which happens to be one of the few VPNs that fully supports peer-to-peer file sharing and torrenting. And maybe you still can't download a car, but your identity will be protected while torrenting other files, like, say, a game that might be hard to find. PIA also blocks ads, trackers, and malicious websites, which all that adds together to make me personally feel a lot safer hunting for delisted games for this channel. PIA also works on streaming sites and is one of the most transparent VPNs out there with a no-log policy that has been proven multiple times in court. It's 100% open source with a public code that anyone can look at, and it's got way more features than most other VPNs. Advanced split tunneling, customizable encryption levels, port forwarding, and even more stuff I didn't know I needed to be worried about. Use our link to get increased digital privacy for less than $2 a month and 4 additional months for free. That's only $197 a month and 84% off on top of a 30-day money-back guarantee. Link in the description below. Thanks to PIA for sponsoring this part of the video. Our journey begins with the Game Boy camera. And look at it, the peripheral that birthed 1,000 creepypastas. The Game Boy camera is a super charming and creative way to bring digital photography to the masses. It of course also had a printer, but there was plenty you could do with just the camera. If you've heard of a Game Boy camera putting you into this game, these crude animations and minigames made up of pictures featuring a whopping 4 colors is probably what you think of. You know, Punching Away is where I get to show my love for weird games and weird peripherals, but I never felt the need to cover the Game Boy camera. It just wasn't quite weird enough for me. I mean, it has so much fun and creative and spooky stuff in it, but I always thought it had so much more potential. Now, back in the late 90s, when I was just a wee uncle, I heard about Perfect Dark's Perfect Head mode, which would let you map Game Boy camera pictures onto custom characters and multiplayer, and I was like, yeah, finally, camera time is here! But Perfect Dark was an overly ambitious mess. I love this game. It is a classic, absolute masterpiece, but it's true. There is so much packed into this game, but at times it barely runs. For a variety of reasons, Perfect Head mode was just one feature that was a bridge too far. I mean, it's crazy. Putting a picture from this dinky thing onto an N64 character? Impossible. I mean, we were already achieving peak graphics, but this was impossible. Or so I thought. Turns out it was totally possible, but only in Japan. Which makes this hard enough already, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, friends, the mission. I put myself into a video game. I'm not talking like the actors in Mortal Kombat or like games that have come out recently. We gotta do this like it's 1999. Here are the tools. Of course, a Game Boy camera. Then a Game Boy Color, or a Game Boy Advance. Okay, technically, or a Super Nintendo with a Super Game Boy, or a GameCube with a GBA player. Look, I know probably not a lot of people out here trying to take pictures with their GameCube, but I'm gonna be thorough and mention it, plus it's the first thing I did when I got the camera. Next, a Nintendo 64. But then how are we gonna get the pictures onto the N64? With a transfer pack, which you could have bought solo, but you probably got with Pokemon Stadium. All right, we're already looking at several $100s worth of kit here, especially for the turn of the millennium, but we are just getting started. Here's the next one, a 64DD. I'm guessing most of you know what this is, but here's a quick refresher. The 64DD is a mid-generation upgrade, / add-on, / new console, / subscription service that Nintendo released in late 1999 only in Japan, where it ultimately flopped and then was scrapped for spare parts. Yes! One of those spare parts? The expansion pack, which is required to run the 64DD, so you'll need one of those too. Oh, by the way, did I say Game Boy camera? Sorry, I meant the Japanese pocket camera, because you know Nintendo does not like to cross the region streams. That was a rude awakening, by the way, if you're curious. That's why we have 2 of these. Even I think it's too dumb to own 2 Game Boy cameras without a good reason. And we're not done. You also need Mario Artist Paint Studio, which actually might be one of the more convenient parts of this whole operation, since it came as a sort of pack-in with the DD if you were actually doing this during Y2K. Nintendo originally sold the DD as part of a mail order package situation, which included a promised season of games, which you could either pay for with 2,500 yen per month or 30,000 yen for a whole year, which in US funny money equals $23 a month or $290 for a whole year. And again, I'm being thorough here, that is $2021 for $37.77 for a month, or $476.20 for a whole year. This is the part where I mentioned that subscription thing did not last a whole year, and you thought Switch Online was ridiculous. Okay, and finally, the actual game in question, SimCity 64. Look at this spread. This is peak proprietary Nintendo ridiculousness. Oh my god, it looks like I made a Nintendo summoning circle or something. This is the secret life your friend whose uncle worked at Nintendo was living. Nintendow's main audience was children and teens. There aren't enough lawns to mow in the universe. Even if you somehow had all this stuff, you can't help but wonder why anyone would go through all the trouble. And that's, of course, if they even knew about this feature at all. Who would have guessed that the Japanese-only sequel / spin-off / port of SimCity 2000 would let you import custom images? I mean, hats off to Hal for putting this feature in the game at all, but this is some serious pie-in-the-sky stuff from Nintendo. But this stuff, it's the type of thing I am here for. Okay, and with all of that out of the way, let's get down to business. First things first, we gotta take a picture. And like I said, my first instinct is to use the GameCube. Now, partially because it's the easiest way for me to capture footage, and also because this ain't my first rodeo. Mama always taught me, stick to what you know best. But for some reason, the GameCube recorded these lines in the footage, even though the pictures looked fine, but I have no idea why that happened. But everyone stop freaking out, it's okay, because I always have a Super Nintendo, Super Game Boy around in case of emergencies. It also helps to have a producer Grace on site to take the actual picture for you. But once you got a good one, it's time to set up the DD. Just flip over your N64, take off that weird slot cover thing that no one ever used because it was actually always meant for the DD, slap on the DD, lock it in, and now your N64 is fully upgraded for the future of gaming. Oh, look at this thick boy. I like my consoles like I like my women. Tall, thick, and with an extra disc. The DD was basically Nintendo's attempt to answer the growing popularity of disc-based systems, but with a twist. Their 64DD floppy disks, that's a disc with a K for you nerds, held more data, had rewritable storage, and happened to be proprietary so Nintendo could keep all their Nintendo bucks while slowly transitioning away from puny, expensive cartridges. Most DD games were standalone discs, though there was an expansion pack for F-Zero X to let you create your own tracks. There was also a planned expansion / patch for Ocarina of Time that eventually was sort of, maybe or maybe not, released as Ocarina of Time Master Quest for the GameCube. However, the games we'll be dealing with today are all standalone discs like Mario Artist Paint Studio. Paint Studio can be best described as a sort of Photoshop Lite software that was a follow-up to Mario Paint on the Super Nintendo. It is also the packed-in origin of this bad boy, the peripheral that kicked off a whole crap ton of punching weights, the N64 mouse. Now, I gotta be real, it is hilarious to play the N64 mouse with games because it is absolutely unwieldy, requiring wild swipes for the tiniest movements. But I always excused it, like, okay, it must be good for the game it was actually made for. Haha, nope! Like, look how hard I gotta move my arm just to get the cursor going. Using the N64 controller was actually a lot easier. But I start making punching weight because I wanted things to be easy. I am thorough! First, we go into the canvas area by clicking on this paint palette icon and navigate the menu down to the Game Boy camera icon. Time to import and time to put in the transfer pack. Actually, even though the transfer pack is usually kind of touchy, I didn't have any problems getting it to read this. Then it is time to import the picture and whoa! What is that? Oh my god. You can just take a picture in the game itself. Okay, that makes more sense. Right, this just got a little easier for people that aren't taking pictures off of a damn GameCube, but okay. I got the pic, except I don't want to put just a lame picture in. This is video games. We need video. You can import an entire 2-frame animation into SimCity 64. So get another image, tell the software to not read the other frames, and voila, looks just like me. All right, hold on. I couldn't help myself from doing a little bit of hyper-realistic photo editing. Just some subtle touches. Damn, your boy looking fabulous as hell. Then, and this is super important,
save the file as Shimu in katakana. Not Tsumu, not Somu, not Nmu, Shimu, or Sim. See, Grace here, she put Tsumu, not Shimu, but that's my fault for not being in the room. Make sure it looks like this one. Make sure it's this one, folks. Once that's done, pop over to SimCity 64 and get a game going. I am the Mayor Skella of the town, or I'm Mayor Town of the town Skelly. I can barely understand Japanese anymore. Anyway, once you're in the game, open up the menu, navigate to the save icon, and then go to the paint icon. This is where the magic finally happens. You have to actually swap the Mario Artist paint disc, but if everything is saved correctly, it should pop up right away. I had an issue where I named the overfolder Shimu, and that got me nothing but the gray screen of disappointment. But if it works, then name your boy, and they should be in your city. Just pop in first person mode, look for them, and BAM! There they are! The game even raised the transparencies on the sides. I love it! They have a default message if you want to talk to them, but there they are, and they just kind of hang out. They don't really do anything. So yes, all this trouble, all of this gear, just so you can put yourself or a drawing or your friends into the game. Sorry, not friends, friend, singular, because you can only put one of these avatars in at a time. And near as I can tell, this is literally it. Just, it's a thing you can look at. Do you know how hard I worked to do this? I didn't even get like a referral bonus, no extra money, no trophy. This game has a hide and seek mode where you look for specific residents for cash, but I never got the option to look for my little buddy. What? Why would you? And this is why I wanted to do the video. It is the most unnecessary thing I've ever seen, because near as I can tell, you get nothing special for doing this. Nintendo was like, hey, who's the super fan who's got all this crap? You can put your face in there. That's it. Doesn't tell you how to play Luigi in Mario 64. Doesn't help you capture Mewtwo. But it's gotta be one of the biggest wastes of time you could possibly do in a video game. But that is the type of information that I'm here to deliver to you. You're welcome. And that definitely is not as exciting as Perfect Head, but luckily, this isn't all that you can do with the good old Game Boy camera. Mario Artist was a bit of a series on the DD and actually had two more main entries, Talent and Polygon Studio. Let's start with Talent Studio. Now you'll notice the menus are a bit different from Paint Studio, but I actually found it a lot easier to navigate with the language barrier. Importing a picture is pretty much the same, except the program actually asks you to map animation points onto a face, and wow, it works! Perfect Head is real! Just look at me, man! Just gotta go through and swag my Ugu the f out. Photo shoot fresh, looking like Wealth about to call the paparazzi on myself. And now what I love about the 64 DD is that a lot of the software and technology was eventually cannibalized into other things. You can really see this in Mario Artist Talent Studio. The whole thing screams Tomodachi Life to me, but with way less Vine energy.
I'm sucking my own dick and dying.
Yeah, pretty cool. Wait, what is this microphone icon? Is this thing compatible with Hey You Pikachu as well? Well, I did some research, and while it seems like the thing that Nintendo would do, the Hey You Pikachu microphone actually comes with a dongle called a VRU that processes your audio itself and doesn't actually pass raw audio files into the N64. So no, that icon is not for Hey You Pikachu after all. And thank God too. I took the Hey You Pikachu Pepsi challenge back in the day, and I chose Seaman.
I love you. You can go away.
Okay, truth is, I would hold not on you. Mario Artist Talent Studio actually came bundled with its own microphone and this thing, the Capture Cassette. It let you input microphone audio, which is mostly only used on the talent screen as far as I can tell. You get your trusty microphone adapter, microphone, I guess I'll add that to the pile. Turn the icon on and just start saying stuff. It's kind of quiet, so you really gotta belt it. The game only seems to catch 1 or 2 syllable phrases, but pretty soon, it'll start talking to you in your voice.
Hey, I'm. Garrett.
Which, while creepy, does keep the Game Boy camera creepypasta saga alive. But the Capture Cassette. Yes, it turns out you don't need this hunk of junk after all, as long as you have a digital camera with video out in the year 2000 and some cables. And sorry, but I didn't end up getting a digital camera that worked for it. I borrowed a friend's camera that I thought would work, but it didn't. I honestly tried, but we couldn't get this to work. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Even Uncle Derek's got his limits. I'm getting kind of tired now. Look at this pile.
Look at the options and the time and the money you had to have to make this work. I'm speechless. Cannot believe this is a real thing that Nintendo let you do or tried to let you do. Or man, what a waste of everyone's time. This wasn't the end of the Mario Artist titles either. There was also Polygon Studio, which was an insanely full-featured 3D model maker. While it didn't let you import photos directly, you could import a 2D image from Paint Studio. Let me just set up my cube and there it is. Nightmare fuel. I don't know why the image looks this fuzzy, but it's technically me. I guess like if an ascended version of me drifted into the astral plane. Polygon Studio had a couple of neat mini-games like this Progenitor 2 WarioWare, but for me, the star of the show was this full-on 3D open world. Hey Mom, look at me, I'm in a game! I did it! Kinda. I am not just in an N64 game, I am playing myself in an N64 game. Mission accomplished! No clickbait, who's got 2 thumbs and did it? This guy! I mean, this mode is relatively bare bones. It's awesome that it has its own physics engine. It has these cute little toasters all over the place that talk to you. This was too weird. I just had to know what they were saying, but thankfully there's actually a translated version of Polygon Studio that you can emulate, where you can see that the toast actually gives you tips about 3D modeling. That's cool. They're really well written, and definitely the type of weird, creative thing that I've grown to expect from a Mario Artist game. The N64 DD had an incredibly short lifespan, getting discontinued in 2001. Mario Artist only had one other piece of software, which was the communications kit, which, along with the RANDnet modem, would allow you to share your creations with other DD heads via the internet. Like, I think the shocking thing about Mario Artist and the DD is that it was a radical, forward-thinking experimentation with freedom from Nintendo that feels really out of step with the company we know today. It also was obviously a passion project. I just don't have any other way that I could possibly explain all of this. They really, really cared and really believed in this. Hey, would you like to see more DD videos? Want to see more of them Ds? 64 DDs, that is? Let me know in the comments, man. This video was made possible by N64 Street Gifts, lent us all of the DD stuff, of course, also made possible by every single one of our patrons. All these people here, you can join their ranks, have your name here in the credits, or get videos early, votes on future videos. That's our Patreon, StopSkeletons.com. At Patreon, no, Patreon.com/StopSkeletonsFighting. Google it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you want more stuff, let us know. Always more ridiculous crap coming. Man, if you can't support us on Patreon though, hey, just tell a friend. Give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe, or just stick around, because we will see you again really soon. Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome back to your favorite show, the HBGN. That's right, the Himbo Video Game Nerd. Your friend, the Himbo Video Game Nerd, he's here just exercising and gaming. So let's have lots of fun with your friend. He's the Himbo Video Game Nerd. Okay, actually no. It's April Fool's Day. This is Stop Skeletons and Fighting, coming at you live from our quarantine, working from home environment. Just the other side of the cabinet, the other side of the shelf here. Welcome. Welcome to Quarantine Zone. And I just wanted an excuse to make a joke on HBGN and to make a punching way on the best gaming peripheral of this generation, Ring Fit. We are living in trying times, people. The world is in chaos. And that is because there haven't been any good video game peripherals since, I guess, the Kinect, which almost killed the Xbox One. I mean, yeah, okay. Nintendo made Labo, but I want something that's gonna last. I need something that I can hold, I can squeeze, and I can thrust with my bare hands. And I can't do that with no cardboard piano. What's a himbo to do? I need fun, wholesome, family fun that I can get buff and I can stay happy. All right, Nintendo made this thing. Thank you, Producer Grace. Ring Fit Adventures. It has taken the world by storm, selling out almost immediately and is currently being scalped to oblivion. Nintendo even confirmed on March 13th that there are no more Ring Fits anywhere in the world. They are all gone. I guess that says it all, right? People are buying it because it's a great way to stay healthy and happy inside. Also, Nintendo was just being cautious and didn't make enough of these. I get it. Nintendo's been making weird exercise peripherals for decades, and other people have too. Like the NES Power Pad or even the Sega Activator to a certain extent. I mean, the difference is they weren't really marketed that way. Though, just look at these high kicks. Yeah! That's exercise. There's tons of other examples like DDR or iToy, which definitely have health benefits, but they were never explicitly sold as exercise games. They're games that made you look cool. Look at these cool teens. I wish I looked that cool. But things started really heating up in the competition to game for your summer hot himbo bod in 2006 with the Nintendo Wii. Wii Sports brought motion controls to the masses. It got everyone off the couch for tennis, bowling, and boxing matches. It's maybe weird to think of Wii Sports as an exercise game, but that's because it paved the way for the most successful exercise game of all time, 2008. Wii Fit, which is now better remembered as a tool for parents to weigh their gas canisters with. Very important. Wii Fit is so synonymous with the Nintendo Wii that you might have forgotten that there was a 2-year gap between the two of these things. The combined sales of Wii Fit and Wii Fit Plus is almost 44 million copies, which would make it the second best-selling Wii game right behind Wii Sports. I was there holiday 2009 in the middle of Wii Fit frenzy. We stacked these things to the ceiling and we still couldn't keep them on store shelves. I didn't work in downtown LA, in North Anchorage. The better exercise is just the box with the pad. This thing's so heavy. I'm getting like nightmares now, like, ugh. Anyway, I don't do that anymore. What are we doing? But from there, Exergaming had arrived. Yeah, that's what it's called, I guess. It's got a Wikipedia page. That makes it official. I don't make the rules. Just Dance, pedometers for your DS, I mean, even face training. It was all over the place. And of course, things started to get really out of control with the Kinect, which was a huge success at first. We made a whole video about that.
Bye-bye, Wii.
And then the bottom dropped out of the console casual market, and unfortunately, Exergaming went down with it. But were these ever truly games? I'm not trying to be exclusionary here, I'm not gonna be like, were they real games? But like most of them had just little mini games, like the slalom mini game on Wii Fit. There are a couple examples of true exercise games out there. Ubisoft's Shape Up had a 4-week RPG campaign, though that was on the Kinect during the end times, so I don't think a lot of people played it. Zombies Run and Pokemon Go incorporated exercise on phones, but for most developers, exercise games were just too hot to handle, unless you were Ubisoft, still putting out Just Dance on the Wii in 2019. But it was basically a dead genre for the rest of the decade. And that brings us to Ring Fit Adventure, released in October 2019. There has never been a game quite like it. The real genius of Ring Fit is how it successfully gamifies exercise. This isn't an exercise regimen on a game disc. This is a game you play by exercising. It's gamersizing. It's finally arrived. Wait, no, I mean, Exergaming. Gamers. Change the Wikipedia. If you didn't know, Ring Fit Adventure is a platforming game with RPG-style turn-based battles. Why is this type of game so rare, even without the peripheral? It's a great idea. I mean, the idea of grinding to gain experience in an RPG is already the gamification of exercise. So why not just go full circle and come back around and incorporate actual exercise? I mean, even beyond that, this campaign is a massive 30 hours. That is over 30 hours of running, jumping, squatting, and squeezing in order to stop Drago, the buff menace. He's a super buff, he's a super buff dragon, and he's a chump. And Ring Fit is fun. Style and design are great, music is really, really catchy, and the Ring Con itself is a solid piece of hardware. It's got a flex sensor built inside, and it's really sensitive, and this thing can really take some abuse. It's the real deal, man. And the rest of the game is handled by the hardware in the Joy-Cons. Like, hey, look at that. Look at that. I'm squeezing, and I'm squeezing. Like, this is honestly one of the best motion-controlled experiences I've ever played. Woo! You could be having fun too. I went back and played Wii Fit and Punch-Out with the balance board for this video, and whoa! Like, that thing barely functions by comparison. Ring Fit, on the other hand, I never felt like I had to meet the controller halfway. I could just move and respond how I felt like my body should, and it would meet me there. Also, like, Wii Fit is mean. Look what it did to my me. Also, making people feel bad for exercising is not a great way to get them to exercise. It's a chump move. And also, hey, I know I need to exercise more. I already bought a Wii Fit to exercise more. Why are you dogging me, dog? At no point does Ring Fit make you set goals for losing weight or use extremely limited measures of health like the BMI. It's incredibly supportive, which is awesome. It just wants me to feel good about myself and have fun. None of that stuff. It's great.
Your sweat is so shiny and beautiful.
Okay, listen. This is a complicated topic, and Uncle Derek ain't out there to make anyone feel bad about their bodies. There's enough chumps out there doing that already. Here is the secret to exercise, the only goal that matters. So you gotta get your heart rate up, listen to your body, and relieve stress so you can feel confident, happy, and healthy. That's it. And for my money, Ring Fit is a great game for that. But also, hey, this is punching weight. I want developers to get in on Ring Fit. I want to see what weird, cool stuff people can do. I want to see this in other games. Like, I don't know, like WarioWare Ring or Doom Exorcise. Like I'm shooting demons with my rocket launcher, or just I'm chainsawing demons and I'm getting buff. Bethesda, call me. Doom Exorcise. Holy crap. I'm copywriting that. Super Lewis 64, who is this crazy controller bending guy, managed to get this ring working with Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart, which is awesome. Y'all need to check him out. I linked him in the description. That's the stuff I'm talking about. So Ring Fit Adventures, yo, this game is a slam dunk from top to bottom. The game is great. This ring con is great too. It seems so obvious in hindsight. Like, why haven't there been more games like this? Why haven't more people seriously tried true exercise gaming on consoles? I mean, even Nintendo didn't really get behind this. Ring Fit was only previewed a month before release. Literally not a damn peep about this game before September 5th, 2019. But then it was the 10th best-selling game in the US in October, and then very quickly became the most scalped game in recent memory, and that was before the entire world went into quarantine. It's also unfortunate this is one of the very few games that you have to own physical. Ring Fit has sold 2 million copies as of December 2019. I do highly recommend this game for quarantine fitness, but not for the outrageous prices you find online right now. I really hope Nintendo will be able to get more units out into the wild soon, despite all the shortages and the ridiculousness with shipping that's happening on this planet right now. This is a game the world should be able to enjoy. Until then, I'm gonna get my buff on. It is April 1st, 2020, the day before my 36th birthday. I wanna celebrate. I'm gonna stream Ring Fit on our Twitch channel today at 4 p.m. PT at twitch.tv/StopSkeletonsFighting. That is not a joke. Even if you don't have a Ring Fit, please, hey, let's work out together. Exercise makes me happy, and I could use some fun right now, and there's no reason for any of us to go alone. Also, be careful out there, exercise within your limits, stay safe, never listen to the chumps, and thank you so much to our Patreon supporters for helping us out and supporting us during this tough time. We already work from home, so Stop Skeletons and Fighting has got more videos coming down the pipe, so we will see you again real soon. Stay powerful.